That's right. This is the second that's right.
Yeah. And we are live in T minus. I wonder if they can hear us while the intro video is playing for 5 more seconds. Who knows? Super chat people, say hello. We're it's late in the evening, but
There we are.
it's still yeah. Hello, welcome
late.
to
I'm a
Without Fears, the
vampire. Sorry
Hermetic
about that.
Podcast, with round 2 of Father Aaron Leitch, Senior Adept of the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. And what else are you, brother? You're many things. What would you say to someone who's never seen you before? What would you say these days?
Well, let's see. So, the Golden Dawn, proprietor of Doc Solomon's Occult Curios online. We supply magical tools and ingredients, especially geared toward the old magic, things that you would use to work spells from the Key of Solomon and the Heptameron and the Lemegeton and all that stuff. I'm also a Gnostic Priest, ordained as well as holding the office of Exorcist, which helps a lot when you're using the Grimoires. And one of my specialties, along with the Solomonic system, those old Grimoires, they're kind of my passion. But one of my specialties as a subsection of that is the Enochian system. And I believe that's what I'm going to be talking about in just a couple of weeks now at the EnochiaCon in Canada.
Yes. Yeah, let's not bury the lead. So you're coming to the Great White North to present at my conference and our conference, and what can people expect from your lecture? What you have a dry run of it coming up at a special day in your order, but yeah, what can people expect?
Corpus Christi is coming up, so I figure I'll take it over there and basically let them be the guinea pigs for the for the presentation. And the main thing I want to see is how long it takes, because I figured this would be when I sat down to write this, I was thinking, oh my god, how am I going to fill an hour? And by the end of it, I'm going, oh my god, I'm not going to, there's no way I'm going to get this done in less than 2 hours, if not more. So I ended up with like 14 pages of notes. And so, yeah, I'll be giving it at the HOGD's Mother Temple on Corpus Christi and find out how long it takes. And then I'll be giving it at the EnochiaCon.
And of course, I did say to you guys, especially the featured presenters, that you could have as long as you want. But brevity is not a bad thing. It's one of my favorite exercises in college was when you write a long essay, then you had to then you got comments, criticism from the teacher, then you had to rewrite it at half that length and then do that one more time.
Yep.
That was one of the most powerful things I ever did in college. Honestly, it's just so simple, but it was incredibly effective.
You've got to be willing. It's like you've got this thing you just want to say. It's the most witty quip you've ever come up with, and it just fits right into the text, and it's just like jelly right on top of the narrative that you're creating. But then you realize it's too long, and you got to make cuts, and you got to be willing to let those really cool things go. It's your baby, but you got to be willing to trim its nails and cut his hair and make it compact enough. But you know what? The reason I struggle is we're talking about an academic subject, and in this case, what I'm doing is I'm exploring a very obscure path through John Dee's Angelic journals. It's something that's passed over in most studies of Enochian, and to be fair, it really should be. Yeah, well, we're talking about editing and brevity and staying to the point. If you're writing a book on Enochian magic, this shouldn't be in there. In fact, that's why it's not in any of my books, because it doesn't impact the Enochian system of magic. But it did impact the scrying sessions and what happened in the scrying sessions. And so it's definitely worth exploring. And it's this little, and God, I hate to spoil it, but I kind of did by posting something about it on my Facebook anyway. So it's essentially within this journey. I mean, everyone knows about the ciphers and the language and this magical system and all this. Beneath that is all this political cloak and daggery going on between all of these powerful, Queen Elizabeth and Emperor Rudolph and Albert Lasky and all of these people. But they're right in there, hidden, is this bizarre treasure hunt story. Like, for no reason, right as they're like, just as Raphael is appearing in the stone, and I mean in general, not in one session, but this is the period where Raphael has just appeared in the stone, and he's about to deliver the Book of Logah, literally the celestial tablets, the Book of the Lamb, the heart and soul of the entire Enochian system. And at that moment is when Kelley brings his friend Husey over, and they've got a treasure map that they want Dee to help decipher, and they want him to involve his angels in obtaining this treasure. And they do. They go off on this bizarre treasure hunt that lasts, several months through the and they're pestering the angels about it, and the angels are getting real testy with them about it. And it's just it's such an awesome story. It's literally one of my favorite tales in the journals, but like I said, it's very obscure. And so since I'm exploring this, I want to make sure I include everywhere in the journals that it's discussed, that it's mentioned, and everything that the humans or the angels had to say on it. So it's harder to make cuts there. And even after cutting out all the stuff I could, I ended up with about 14 pages. I think there's still more I could trim out, but yeah, it's going to be interesting. So at 14 pages, I'm expecting it to take probably an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours.
Yeah, that's a good length. So the treasure hunt is an interesting and deceptive period or episode in their lives, because at first glance it always seemed to me really straightforward and obvious and very misled on their behalf. But the more I've looked into it here and there over the years, and especially since I talked to you last time reading the Woolley biography again, because I read it a bit when it came out, but at the time it came out, I was so busy with temple life and being in grad school, I didn't read it closely. I would say it was more like, looking for interesting things that stood out. But this last time rereading it, I got a much more in-depth understanding of it, because my knowledge of history is better too, of course. But the treasure hunt period, I mean, when you can see, you have to, for example, I think it makes no sense outside of the context of how rough a time economically England was, they were going through. He points out, this is interesting. So he points out that this is no joke. The common people during that period, when they were doing the treasure hunting, right, which of course partly involved getting nobles to give them money to go look for treasure, right? So there's income from the nobles that they probably need. So the common people, it wasn't rare for people's diet to consist of, and I shit you not, to consist of a mixture of wet sawdust and blood. Common people were eating that for their food. That's hard to imagine, right? Of what? Yeah. So he points. Benjamin Woolley points out in his bio, the Queen's Conjurer. He points out that the nobles, to maintain their noble status, they were spending all their money on fancy clothes, right? And on their little parties, but they were broke. They were kind of broke. Which is why the Queen was funding all these expeditions, and why Dee was teaching people all these techniques for navigating, which they promptly ignored, of course. Of course they ignored them. They're like, oh yeah, we get it, we'll be fine, we'll just go. Next thing they know, they got Eskimos throwing spears at them and stuff. They're like, whoa, oh, did we go too far north? And yep, you did.
Yeah.
So in the treasure hunting, it seemed to me after reading that book like it was like a method for them surviving and getting funding to go find greater treasures. So that was changed the context from them being like, hey, let's learn. Like, they weren't just saying, hey, let's use magic to get rich. That's not what it was.
Right.
I thought I used to think it was a brief period in their life where they were misled and thinking that they could become essentially millionaires by finding old treasure, because the Catholics had buried tons of stuff, and that's not even counting the centuries of other treasures that had been buried from past kingdoms and empires. I mean, we still find detectorists still find that stuff today, going back thousands of years. So there was definitely treasure to find. It's not unlike, whereas if I headed to the mountain in North Vancouver, I wouldn't be finding old treasures, right? I might find arrowheads and First Nations artifacts, which would be super cool, of course. But yeah, you're not going to find some buried chest of all these church relics that Catholics hid during.
No, in the
Bloody
New World,
Mary's
it was all rumors of lost cities, like Inca gold, Aztec gold, and pirate booty. Those were where most of your treasure hunting legends came from, were those two things. But over in England, yeah, and I decided, rather than just jumping right into the treasure hunt story in these journals, I decided to give a little bit of an introduction to this whole concept of treasure hunting in not just medieval, because Dee was past medieval, but medieval Renaissance England. And that's a point I make, is that there was legends of treasures just from the Danes and from the Jacobites and from the Templars. I mean, there was just treasure packed in the ground up there to be found. And the idea of searching for treasure sounds outlandish to us. But at the time, no, that actually did sound like a viable, it was just a gamble, but it was still a viable way of gaining wealth. But you had to have a prince who would license you to do it, or you had to do it in secret and not get caught, that was a whole another bag of issues. And then I think what concerns us most with Dee's journals is the magical side of it, because it wasn't, hey, let's use magic to get treasure. It's just that finding treasure necessarily involved magic. So if you were going to search for treasure, you would be using one of the grimoires. You'd be using the Lemegeton and calling one of the spirits that can lead you to treasure, or you would be using one of the Faustian texts or something like that in order to be guided to treasure. And then, of course, you had to battle off the spirits that were guarding that treasure. And in some cases, there are even spells that promise that you could then, having overcome those guardian spirits, get them to dig it up for you. So, there was this whole culture surrounding treasure hunting at the time, which, again, sounds outlandish to us, but to Dee and Kelley and his friend, that it wouldn't have sounded that outlandish. The question is whether or not Kelley was being honest, because I only mention it in my lecture, so I'm not really giving too much away here. But while Kelley and Husey were like this through the whole treasure hunt, they were the two. They were searching for the treasure. They just came to Dee to employ his magic and get him to decipher the texts and stuff. So they all three ended up into it, but it was really their quest. And it all came crashing down when Kelley came back from Blockley that one day, just in an absolute rage, saying that Husey was an asshole, and Husey was accusing him of being a cozener. His wife had been staying at their house, not Dee's, but at the Husey's house in Blockley, and suddenly she had fled to her mother's house. And I mean, just everything fell apart. And even the police were looking for Kelley, apparently officially on the charge of counterfeiting. Yeah. So something went on with this whole treasure hunt that's just not recorded. All we know is something happened, and the relationship between between Kelley and Husey just went nuclear, imploded, was over and done forever. And yeah, we don't know what that was. I don't know what a hothead like Kelley did, or what he got caught doing.
The biographies actually point out that he was probably pulled in for cozening, for coining, for the same reason that people like Christopher Marlowe were by Walsingham, to compromise them and force them to spy for him. So that was a revelation to read. The
coining was a common charge that Walsingham.
Yeah, and for people who don't, that's when you chip bits off of coins so that you can then melt them down into, so you're devaluing the currency. It's like if you could clip off little bits of $100 bill and then glue those other bits together.
Yeah,
it actually reminds me of The Office, where Kevin's like, you should save one piece of a Big Mac each day, and then at the end of the week you have a free Big Mac.
A free Big Mac. That's how they did it.
So
there's so much about Kelley that really points to him being some kind of spy. I mean, he was either working for the Catholics or something, but there was a lot of weird stuff going on with Kelley. But on the other hand, I could totally see Kelley actually coining too. I could actually see it. But I'll be honest with you, and I do mention this in the lecture, but again, it's just a mention. I don't go into this aspect of it. I'm just focused on the treasure hunt in the lecture. But my suspicion is Kelley was cozying up to Husey and his family and probably bleeding them for money. He was probably getting loans from them and other, not even loans, but like his wife was living there. So he's, you know, they're eating their food, they're using their resources. I think he was really taking advantage of the situation, all on the promise of, yeah, we're about to hit it big with this treasure, you know, so stick with me, pal. This is all gonna. And I think something happened where maybe Husey just got freaking over it, tired of waiting. It had been months. I mean, it hadn't been like years or anything, but you know, maybe who knows what his patience level was, or like I said, maybe he caught Kelley at something, at a lie or something, you know, because Kelley had the story of where they found it and how they found the Book of Dunstan and all that. That's all in my lecture. But, you know, maybe he caught him in a lie into some of that, you know, maybe just something happened there where Husey was done and done enough and had enough pull that he could sick the cops on Kelley. And it wasn't that long because this all happened in July, and by September, which seems like a long time, but in that day, things move slower. So by September 17th, I think it was, is when Dee and Kelley and Lasky all slipped out of England in the dark of night. And that's when they went to the continent, and the whole treasure hunt was just over. It just evolved into a nuclear mess. As most things with Kelley, it just evolved into a mess. And then everyone has to flee in the middle of the night.
Though I do love that that recent scholarship and even magicians have resuscitated, or what's the word? You know, I had it for a second. The something Kelley, like gotten his reputation a bit back into a more balanced, accurate point of view. What's the rehabilitated? Yeah, rehabilitated. Because I think rehabilitated. That's the word. For so long, we were relying on like the Kosovan narrative, and then the Smith, I think it's the Smith biography, and people who were it was harder to attack Dee because he was so verifiably brilliant. You couldn't say he was an idiot at all, but you could attack him by attacking Kelley and be like, look at how dumb Dee was to trust this idiot. And so that was really popular.
Him an idiot by and I know that is the Kosovan narrative, but that narrative just infected everyone's narrative for
up until like the last 15 years or 20 years.
Yeah, and Kelley was just this con man, and I think Kelley was a scoundrel. I mean, we saw him get into duels with people. We saw him being a hothead.
He had a temper.
He was willing to break the law, and I do think he was probably involved in some cloak and daggery. But at the same time, I think Kelley was a scoundrel and a counterfeiter, and he was just there, conning Dee, and this was all just a con he was running on Dee.
Yeah,
it is just
in my opinion, that's been debunked.
Disingenuous. I think so. It's when you look at the sessions. I mean, the very idea that Kelley could have held all of that in his mind. I mean, even accounting for contradictions and mistakes from one session to the other, you're literally attributing to him an intellect that goes beyond anything any human has ever had. To hold the entire Book of Logos in his head, the entire angelical language in his head. I mean, all those hierarchies of angels, the encrypted squares, all of this he just had in his head that he fed to Dee. I don't think anyone buys that anymore. You know, there was a lot more going on. If you're going to go the skeptic route, let's say magic is, there's no magic and we're only talking about Malkuth here. I'm more willing to believe that Dee was pulling a fast one than Kelley. You know, like there are places where the angels make predictions in the journals that appear to me to be places Dee left blank spaces and waited for the events to happen and then came back and filled in those spaces. And I think and it's not, I'm not discrediting the angels. Obviously I work with them, I'm not discrediting the angels, But I'm pointing to the fact that Dee had these ambitions of being a prophet. He wanted to be able to go into Emperor Rudolph's court and say, God is saying this and you have to do it. And go into the court of the King of Spain and say, this is what you're doing wrong. And so he needed that book. He needed those journals to prove his legitimacy. And part of that, and if you know that time and place, part of that meant he had to have a book of prophecy that could be verified. So I just don't put it past him to slipping things in there to spice things up and make sure that the skeptics would see him as legitimate. And it didn't work.
I think that is possible. Well, but with the Emperor Rudolph tirade, like he went to his first, he was actually so good at courtly life. Like he got a lady to marry him, which is like, that's kind of like getting an heiress today to marry you.
Oh, are you talking about Kelley?
No, Dee.
Oh, Dee. Oh, okay.
Yeah, Dee was good.
So you're talking about Lady Jane. Yeah.
And also he was able to manage Elizabeth well enough that like he gave her private lessons on the Mones. They did alchemy together. So Dee was not
even in the journals that's recorded. She sent a whole entourage to his house. Or actually, she can't. Was she there? I think
she would go to his house. She just wouldn't go inside. Yeah.
Right.
It would be inappropriate. Yeah. Plus, his house was he wasn't a hermit. His house was full of kids, wives, nursemaids. It was like
it was a center of learning, and it was a university, is what it was. I mean, people were there doing experiments. People were there consulting going into his library, looking for stuff. But I was going to say, and again, I briefly mention it and rainrod right over it in my lecture, but I do like to debunk this whole idea that Dee was just this poor man. I mean, going back to the treasure. He wasn't even seeking the treasure because he was dirt poor. I mean, he had, like you said, he had servants. He married nobility.
When he needed money, it was like you or me. When he needed money, it would have been like you or me needing like a quick, 200-300K just to cover some bonus things. He wasn't going out there like, oh, I need $500 for rent. It was more like I need $80,000 to buy this book.
That's the thing. That's the point. Is that when you see him bemoaning his financial state in the journals, what you're seeing is a person who is talking to the court, and he's talking to Elizabeth's court, and he's saying, look at all this stuff I've done for you, and look at all the stuff he did for them. My God, the modern world wouldn't exist without John Dee. And he says, look at all this stuff I've done for you. Could you please compensate me what I'm actually worth? And the court was just like, meh. Honestly, they probably couldn't, but they just kind of left him out in the cold. So yeah, he was asking for funding. He wasn't asking, hey, I'm poor and I need to eat. He was asking for funding for projects, for experiments, for equipment, for expeditions, this was a happening dude. And a lot of people were consulting him on a lot of things. Raleigh consulted him before coming to the New World. When they discovered the passage from England to Russia, which is literally how England ended up becoming a world power, was allying with Russia and having trade with Russia. Dee is the one that helped them map out the trade routes. No one knew about those northern trade routes before. It was his equipment they used to find them. And we all know Dee coined the term British Empire. I mean, just like I said, there was so much about the modern world that started right there at Mortlake. And so Dee's definitely one of my heroes. Definitely was not poor, but was awful. Also, I agree, he was not compensated truly what he was worth and what he actually
sold his copy of the SSM, the Summa Sacra Magica, because he needed a carriage with horses. Can you imagine? Yeah. Can you imagine how he must have felt to finally get that book? And we just finally got it, right?
Like, I couldn't imagine letting my current modern copy go.
We've been waiting years for this. Thank you, Stephen Skinner.
Can you imagine it? And I talk about this sometimes when I'm teaching the Solomonic system, is that when you're looking at these grimoires, it's easy for us to go onto Amazon and get them. But can you imagine a world where you had to spend your entire life questing just to find a few of these texts, and then to have to sell them off to get. But you know what? I'm gonna jump onto the other side. I'm gonna play devil's advocate because Dee could be a gangster as well. Because let's never forget, Dee petitioned Queen Mary and Queen Elizabeth to found a national library. And I don't know if you've ever looked into the details of what he proposed to Queen Mary. I don't know what he proposed to Elizabeth. I assume it was the same. But what he proposed to Queen Mary was this. You go door to door throughout England and you ask for people's books. Yeah. And if they choose to say no, then you send the guards with swords and you knock again and you take the books. And that is how he planned to form England's first national library. And Bloody Mary herself said, "Oh, dude, whoa, no. We're not going to do that."
Bloody Mary's telling you to chill out.
You might have been going too far. And I don't know why Queen Elizabeth turned him down, but neither queen wanted to go that route. And I would have been surprised if Elizabeth had done that, because that's pretty harsh.
Yeah.
But that's how libraries were formed back then. We talk about the library that was lost in Egypt. What was the Library of Alexandria? And we bemoan how that was lost. But if you actually look in the history of how that library was formed, that's how they did it. You bring your boat in, and they confiscate your books.
Well, also, if you wanted to copy a book, you had to give them 2 books they didn't have, or copy books 2 books for them. So you'd take a book, leave 2 books, is what I was taught in high school.
Well, one thing that I learned that they would do is, let's say you come into port and they seize your books, but they say, "Don't worry, we're just going to take these, make copies, and bring your books back. You're cool." And then when you're ready to leave, they bring you back the copies and tell you, "Bon voyage, buddy." And and they're probably crappy, second-rate, done real fast, inaccurate copies at best,
with all the pictures not recreated.
All the pictures, no pictures.
Which would have sucked if it was an erotica book.
Oh my God! You can imagine the Kama Sutra and all the images are gone. But yeah, so libraries were kind of gangster back then. They were kind of run by some bad people sometimes. It wasn't the altruistic thing that we think it was. And even Dee was willing to be pretty harsh in order to get that knowledge, gaining knowledge and centralizing knowledge. And that he paid to borrow the Codex Marcianus, and apparently he had to basically stay up 2 days straight, or 24 hours straight, copying it in Greek. Fortunately, he was the Greek expert of his age, right? Thank God. But that's daunting, right? And I'd love to just jump back quickly to the Rudolph II. The first time Dee shows up to Rudolph, because it's important. I think I've noticed now in deeper and deeper study as we do, he really didn't want to deliver the message to the emperor that the angels told him to. He didn't want to be seen as this apocalyptic prophet, it seems, in that one instance, because he knew how courtly life worked. He's like, "Look, if you make me go say these things to the emperor, that's it. We're done." And they were like, "You must do this," and so he did it. I mean, and he did, and he was right. They had to run.
Yeah. But it did eventually.
Oh, go ahead.
Well, it's interesting though, because again, especially as I get older, my reading of history and historical people changes. Right. That's one of the interesting things about getting older yourself. You just have a very different perspective on things, and you start to read things differently. And you're like, "Oh yeah, I totally get why they did that now." When I was young, it's like, "Oh, what idiots." Now I'm like, of course. Yeah, of course. And then, of course, when you remember that they got all these kids around them and their wives, and Dee loved his wife, Kelley not so much his wife. The things Kelley wrote about his wife are like,
well, there may be another aspect to Kelley that a lot of people don't think about, because he did make it when the angels commanded him to marry, which he did not want to do, and he said a very curious thing. What was the exact words? I have no inclination to have a wife, or it was something. I know I'm misquoting, but it was very telling. It was like, if you're just reading through in the journals, you know what it's like when you're reading the journals. It's just It's a lot coming at
It's
you.
a lot. It's a lot.
And it's Elizabethan. It's Shakespearean. So it's a lot. It's thick. It's thick. And so you can miss it. But that statement, I have no inclination toward a white. Wait a minute.
That reads differently these days.
Yeah, I'm not so sure. I'm not so sure it read differently in 1583 either. I'm kind of wondering. And there is. And remember, I said I made the offhand comment that he might have been working for the Catholics. That's a whole kettle of fish. And I don't have the story.
He explicitly said he wanted to work with the Catholics. He got hardcore into Jesuitism with one of his mentors when they were in Poland.
And that's it's that Jesuit thing. And again, I don't have the full story. Terry Burns is really the one with all this stuff. But I do know
some fun roundtables
in was it in Prague? I want to say it was in Prague when they got to Prague. Or no, maybe it was in Spain. Okay, see, this is not in my head. While they were in Europe, let's just say there was a period where Kelley stole the journals and vanished and was gone for like days. And then he came back. Yeah. And Dee's like, what the hell? Where did you take the journal? And he wouldn't say. He just said that he wanted to show him to a friend or something, and he would not say.
Them to the Jesuit.
And that's one of the big, this is all that happened while he's hanging around with these Jesuit assholes. I know I keep saying that, but he's hanging out with these Jesuit people. And
it sounds like they were.
Very possible that they talked him into bringing those books in for review to see what Dee was up to. And yeah, it's. I think that he may have been working with the Catholics. So, but that's just one thing. Looking into Kelley is like looking into the Kennedy assassination. Everybody did it. Kelley was working for freaking everybody. Kelley was gay. Kelley was straight. Kelley was a thief. Kelley was a true scryer. Kelley was faking. Kelley was pious, a scoundrel. He is one of the most enigmatic figures, I think, in human history. I mean, and
he'd fight people, challenge them to duels.
Yeah, that kind of hothead. And I'm sure you're aware of this because you hang around with the people who are into this. And we've been getting, I would say, over the last 20 years, that a lot of old Czech documents have started to get translated, and we're getting new stories about Kelley that we never had before. So I'll say to everybody listening right now, everyone watching right now, the whole story of Kelley dying or breaking his leg, trying to get out of prison and then dying from that is probably complete nonsense. It's a story that made it back to Dee, and Dee recorded it in his journal in England, but nothing in the Czech documents suggests that. Everything in the Czech documents suggests that he lived out his life there. He married, he had a stepdaughter who wrote about him after he passed. There's all sorts of documents and stuff about Kelley's life as a court alchemist to Rudolph II that have just been unknown
and that's,
so recently. So it's kind of amazing.
And when you think about, a lot of people would say, oh, they were misled and they didn't achieve their goals. Well, obviously, ultimately in life, if you carry the story on long enough, it always becomes a tragedy because we all die. And like the way that Dee's family all died of the plague and stuff, it's all so freaking sad.
You either die a hero or you live long enough to become a villain.
Right. So you stop the story a bit earlier and it's a comedy. So that's the Shakespeare thing, right? But it's interesting because like in Prague, they kept going into more and more debt, right? They kept having to borrow money. They couldn't find patrons. They were doing partially and largely probably that's because they were doing what the angels told them to do a lot of the time. Not all the time, but a lot of the time. And especially when the angels were like, you must do this. And they're like, hell no, you're insane. And they're like, you got to do it or we're going to go somewhere else maybe. And then they did it. And sure enough, it went badly, right? Rudolph was nonplussed, to say the least. But there's this great moment when Kelley finally gets his patron and he has this castle. And there's this great scene described by Benjamin Woolley in the bio where he's like apparently Dee and Kelley, they called the guy they owed the most money to, and it was a large sum of money, probably, right? We're probably talking like, gangster money. And they put it all, they gold more they piled it, but so they owed a lot of money to someone, I can't remember who. They piled it all on this table in their new little Kelley's new castle in his alchemy lab. They piled up this table of money just like an original G, called the guy in who they owed the money to, and they were like, yo, check it, here you go. and they wanted him to see how much wealth they had now, and it was Kelley's wealth, really, of course. But Dee and him were still working together, and that's probably during when they had started doing this series of different how do we call it, co marital communion experimenta.
Oh yes,
yeah. That's probably when they were getting really close as a couple, married couples. So anyway, I just thought that's a funny story because they did end up getting a ton of money. They were rich by the end of following the angel's advice, and then after the vision of fortitude, they went their own ways.
They went their
ways. Was that Kelley's choice? Was that Dee's choice? Was that? Who knows? We'll never know because that's where we have, it seems, such scarce information unless something in check pops up.
Yeah, and as far as the choice goes, at least from Dee's journals, I just get this feeling, and it's, if you think about from a magical perspective, during the revelation of the Enochian system, from the Heptarchia all the way to the Great Table, it's very powerful. There's a lot of energy, and things are coming at the men very fast. And then after the wife swap incident, well, actually, no. Let me backtrack. Once the entirety of the Enochian system had been transmitted, things started to wind down. And then by the time of the wife swap incident, that seemed to be what kind of broke it. And there's no energy left in the journals after that. But you can literally see the men just growing apart. And I can totally see, Kelley was set up in his new position in Prague, and it was time for Dee to go home. And I don't even think it was anyone deciding anything. I think it was just like, okay, hey, it's been nice, and I got to go back to England and see it. And I think their lives just drifted apart, like people's do sometimes. Like you can have your best friend, and just little by little, your paths diverge.
And can you imagine living with someone and their whole family and doing magical work all day, every day, while doing everything else? And like after a certain amount of time, you need a break. And in those days, once you had a break, it was very unlikely that you would.
Yeah, and I think that explains a lot of Kelley's outbursts too. He scrying day after day after day, and Dee was being kind of exploitative as far as that goes, because that will burn you out. That's what Crowley did to his Scarlet Women. He'd get these women and just burn them out and then move on to the next Scarlet Woman, another scryer. I'm married to a very powerful scryer, and I see what it does to her when these full-blown visions come in, and I wouldn't make her sit there and do that day after day. Kelley even talked about he could feel them moving around in his head, and it was unpleasant. And Dee was just, well, okay, let's keep going, So I could totally see that driving Kelley, those instances he'd have where he'd scream that these are all demons and this is all pointless and why are we doing this? And I want to quit. He did quit, remember, for a while and left, and but he needed a break,
Yeah.
So again, complex man, very complex and mysterious man, Mr. Kelley.
And to be fair, it is impressive. It's worth remembering that even when Dee was on hard times before they had their big break in Prague and Kelley had money, before that, Dee was still paying Kelley the equivalent of $50,000 a year to work for him.
Yeah.
Doing all that. So that's actually like at one point, sometimes I'm like, oh, that's a bad deal. Sometimes I think that's a bad deal. That's not so great. But then at other times I'm like, would I take $50,000 right now to work with someone magically for a few years? Like, maybe that's not the worst deal in the world, right? Like, especially if you actually dig the person,
unless it involves
the genius of their age.
Wear you down.
Right. Like if one of your favorite people, like, I don't know who that might be, Steven Skinner or Andreas Erneas or someone like that, was like, hey, I'll give you X amount of money to come travel with me, and you can bring your family. I'll cover all the expenses and give you a bit extra, and we'll just go on this crazy magical voyage. It's like, it's not the worst opportunity to befall someone at a time in which people are eating blood mixed with sawdust for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Right. Like, what are your options?
Absolutely. And that's
the burnout.
This leads us to I'm sorry, what were you gonna say?
No, the burnout takes on a whole other realm of possibilities when you consider the possible use of entheogens.
And what was the thing you said? What takes on a different? light?
The whole Kelley burning out and getting exhausted, that takes on a
Oh, the
whole
burnout.
other.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, like, and if you throw in
Yeah.
entheogens to the mix, the burnout
Can you
takes in a whole
imagine?
other.
Because and we talked about this before the live stream started, but like PD Newman talks about in Angels and Vermilion, awesome book, that red substance that they had, that Dee and Kelley had, really does fit the bill as being acacia. So if they were using that as part of their this is an interesting subject, because people scoff at the idea that drugs were a part of scrying in those old days, because they're not mentioned in the Grimoires. But Chris Bennett put out an awesome book called Liber 420, and in that book he explores that aspect of medieval history, and that there was actually kind of a drug war going on at that time. There it is. There was a drug war going on at that time as well. It wasn't like today, but it was just that drugs were seen as being too pagan. Only pagans used drugs in their evil demonic rituals. So you can write these grimoires, but because it's Christian magic, you're not supposed to put the drug. You're not supposed to mention the drugs in there. If you go back to like the Picatrix, now drugs are opium and all sorts of other drugs are mentioned in there. So it's very likely, and we have some other historical records that indicate drug use with this magic. Like you've heard the story of the Colosseum, right? I don't know if you're. I think you're muted. You can hear me, right?
Sorry. Yeah, no, I haven't heard that story.
Okay.
Can you tell us?
Very briefly, because I don't want to go too far aside. But yeah, I forget the guy's name now. But this is in Ritual Magic by Elizabeth Butler, is where you'll find the story. But this is an actual medieval record of a magician who took a group of curiosity seekers, basically, into the Colosseum. And he proceeded to summon goetic spirits, chthonic spirits, into the Colosseum, to the point that they filled all the seats. They were just surrounded by demons in this Colosseum. And but the key to the story is that as the magician was beginning his ritual and doing the invocations, he passed around this bowl that everyone needed to sip from. And the person who recorded this story chose not to sip from the bowl, and reported that he didn't see any spirits or have any experience at all during that ritual. But everyone else there saw all the spirits surrounding them in the Colosseum. So, I mean, there's just things like that. There are hints of and records of drug use in Solomonic magic. And then when you get to Dee and Kelley and that weird red powder that they referred to as a congealed substance, a red congealed substance. And PD Newman makes a great case that is actually acacia, which, DMT has a long history. It's DMT, has a long history in Western occultism, alchemy.
Ark of the Covenant.
It's usually green coded into alchemy texts because, again, drugs, that's pagan. We don't do that. But in fact, a lot of alchemy is about extracting medicines from plants and from, different substances.
And so, Kelley's famous poem.
Or Kelley was probably tripping. I doubt Dee did.
They mentioned drugs one time in the diaries, and Chris mentions that in his book, but Chris didn't go to look at the diaries to see the context. And it's too bad Chris didn't do that, because as I pointed out to him, I was like, dude, if you had, you would, because he quotes PD Newman, right? But if you go to the diary, and I mentioned this to PD, when you look in the diaries at where the one time they mentioned the word drugs is, it's April 20th.
What is it?
420.
What's the context? Like, what are they talking about at that period, at that point?
Maybe I'll read it. Well, I guess I could. I can. It's hard to tell. It's confusing. It's here we go. We got the new. It's here we go. The
nice.
New Peterson, the new Joseph Peterson text, which everyone should get. I think it should be the first books people get. Even before, arguably even before your work. Your work is fundamental as far as I think.
Well, he's the source material, man.
Well, it's good. It's good to start with the diaries, right? Because you get the vibe.
Yeah,
you get the vibe. Yeah, and then get
my work is to guide you through those diaries, but you should have the diaries, you know.
Yeah,
you're not getting the real feel for it if you just go through secondary texts.
Yeah, so it's in the appendix, April 20th, Saturday, 1583.
That is so cool.
Yeah, it is that it's on 420 that they mentioned. Let's see if I can find the actual word. I'm not used to the formatting of the new book, so it's harder for me to find it.
So there's another place we can say the angels prophesied something.
Yeah. Well, and what's interesting also is if you have to read it really carefully because it's not. Oh, here it is. So it's confusing, and if you don't read it carefully, you'll think that the wrong person is saying the wrong thing. So the context is so important with this stuff. And sometimes I read it and I think, oh, they needed medicine for one of the wives, and then other times I read it, I'm like, no, it's something different. So there's a preamble, then Dee says, what matter? Ilamise. It's Ilamise, right? Ilamise? How do you say it?
That's how I say it. Yeah, Ilamise.
Well, you're the expert. Ilamise says, I must have a wallet to carry your wit and mine own in. Dee says, Benedictus qui venit in nomine Domini. Ilamise says, then I perceive that I shall have a blessing. Blessed is the physician that hath care of his patient before the pangs of death doth visit him. Dee says, what think you of that cloudy heptagamum? Ilamise says, dost thou consider I go about it? I told thee everything I did was an instruction, as I cannot stand steadfastly upon this itself one and one perfect, so cannot my mouth declare, much less speak, that you may comprehend it. What this is whereupon I go. Then Edward Kelley chimed in. He went on the heptagonon as one might go on the top of a turning wheel, and in parentheses, as some horses used to turn wheels, as may appear in Georgius Agricola de Re Metallica and Ilamise. I know what all your talk hath been, but such minds, such infection, such corruption, and must needs have a potion applicable for the cure. But how will you do? I have forgotten all my drugs behind me. This is Ilamise saying it. But since I know that some of you are well stored with sufficient ointments, I do intend to visit you only with their help. You see, all my boxes are empty. Then Edward Kelley says, he showeth a great bundle of empty potticherry boxes, little boxes, and they seem to be, to my hearing, to rattle. Dee says, how cometh it that you pretend to come from a favorable divine power to pleasure us, and your boxes are empty? It's like he's chastising the spirit for running out of drugs. Ilamise says, you said even now in your talk, Eovis omnia plena, if my empty boxes be virtuous, how much more shall anything be which I bring not empty? D. Then I pray you to say somewhat of the virtue of your empty boxes. Ilamise, will you have my bill? D. Shall we go to the apothecaries with your bill? Ilamise, I will show it, serve it, where you list, Udra galgo astel. D. You know we understand it not. How can it be served? Ilamise, you must needs have an expositor. What book of physic is that lieth by you? And then D tells him, and it goes on a little bit more, but I think that's enough, right? People can go read it. We're not going to decipher the true ontological meaning of this text right now. So hopefully we can.
It's a little beyond the scope.
People are excited to think they can go check it out, and really there's something going on. And I would love to. I do want to add to discuss that passage at the conference. We got to discuss that passage and see what everyone thinks.
Well, and you talk about context being important. There's some context there too that's important.
So they say.
Ilamise was a jerk. Ilamise was a rascal. I'm serious. I talk about this in the lecture. Throughout the treasure hunt, most of the time when the men would interrupt the angels with talk about the treasure, they'd get chastised for it. They'd get called stupid. They'd be say, hey, why are you wasting our time with this nonsense? One time, Uriel just flew way off the handle on them. Ended the session. I go into this in the lecture, but he was mad. And they made it clear they didn't want any part of this treasure nonsense. But it started with Ilamise when he came into the stone. and he started conflating. The men were talking about treasure. He wanted to talk about the Book of Logah, because they were supposed to complete the Book of Logah, the reception of it, which I think had already happened by that point. Then Dee had 40 days to make a perfected copy of the book, which he never did. And then they were going to have another 40 days to rest and just, get last minute details sewn up. And then that would take them to August. And that's when they were supposed to perform Jebufal, the 49-day ritual to open the tables of Logah. So Elami showed up and he wanted to talk about this, and they wanted to talk about the treasure. And so he just decided, screw it, and started calling Logah the treasure. He started talking about, in 40 days, goest thou down in August, go down for the treasure. And he's like, what treasure? Well, the treasure you've been asking for. You're going to go dig it up. He gaslit the hell out of those guys. And when he started doing that, some of the angels, like Uriel, I think, kind of joined in at one point in another session. And like, yeah, the treasure. Yeah, that thing you've been asking us about. Yeah. So the angels just figured out, and it started with Elami. He's being a jerk. They figured out that they could string the guys along if they just started calling what they wanted the men to do, going down to get the treasure, and letting the men think that they were talking about the actual physical treasure. And that went on for like weeks. And it wasn't until the whole thing fell apart. And Eighth, one of the daughters of Light, showed up, and they asked her about it. And she said, look, let me stop you right there. That's not going to happen, guys. This is not happening. And she put an end to the whole treasure hunt right there. And but the whole thing, every time Elami is in the journals, he has just got this snide, kind of sarcastic. That whole exchange you just read was him basically calling them idiots, and the empty boxes and all that. That was basically him just saying, you guys are morons, and why should I even be wasting my time with you? He was just like that. All these angels had such individual personalities. Ave had his way about him. Madimi had her particular weird quirks and stuff. I'm sorry. I'll go on forever about this because I just love all this.
I can't believe an hour's already passed by. I feel it's almost like we need to spend more time together or something.
we could keep doing this. Maybe we should get together up there and have a conference or something.
I don't know. It sounds like a good idea to me. I mean, yeah, and someone in the comments here, we'll check. Knox Absterk says maybe Cliff from Enochian today. Cliff is a good friend of mine. I absolutely want him to come up to do a con. Yeah, we might do it in the States next year, or we might even do it in Prague next year. Wow. We'll see. Yeah, so we might jump the gun on Prague, honestly, because it's a much more affordable city than Vancouver. And it's actually cheaper. And as much as I wanted to, I'm proud of my country. I love my city. I do. And this is where Frater RC is buried. There's a beautiful, rich. We're going to have a great lecture from this Victoria fellow who lives on a boat, Chris Trenholm. He reached out. He found us by strange circumstances and synchronicities, and proposed a lecture on the historical personages from 100 years ago, and the esoteric architecture in our government building, and especially about Sir Francis Drake.
I love stuff like that.
He asked me, didn't he know Dee? And it's like, he absolutely knew Dee. So that's going to be so fun for all of you guys to come here and actually get a history of the BC mystics and magicians that were around 100 years ago and on and off throughout I'm really proud of that. But in Canada, things are so rough with our country the last 10 years that it's actually cheaper for us to fly to Europe than to fly within Canada for our own, within our own. That's nonsense, right? That's crazy. And I don't know if things are going to change. A lot of us hoped for a change and didn't get it, and we'll see what happens. But we all want to go to Prague anyway. But if we have to do it maybe we'll do it in the States. Maybe we'll do it in Austin or somewhere. It's up in the air. As always, I always ask the members. I ask the members of our fledgling society what they think, what they want to do. I'm still a little bit of a socialist at heart, being a left coast Canadian. I've taken some hits along the way and probably become a bit more middle of the road or hypercritical, perhaps you could say, but overall, I really did want to give the Pacific Northwest a chance to rise up and do something awesome. And so even if it's the only year that we have it here, so be it. At least we're getting we're doing what we can. But we should actually just take a 2-minute break and play a little promo for the conference and see if we can show people what it's about. I'm sure there's some people watching who don't know about it. So let's just take a quick minute here and show you this. Right. We'll do an actual. We'll be right back after these messages.
Canada's only occult conference returns this July 11th to 13th. EnochiaCon is an opportunity to come together with leading scholars of esotericism and practitioners of Western occultism in a friendly and open environment in Vancouver, Canada. This year in 2025, with presentations by an amazing group of presenters, including Dr. Justin Sledge, Dr. Terry Burns, Father Aaron Leitch, Dr. Sasha Chato, Frater Eleftheria of Lifting the Lamp, Dr. David Litwa, Chris Trenholm, Daniel Rekshan, David Rankine, Ike Baker, and P.D. Newman. You can also attend live online and experience premier presentations of cutting-edge research and discoveries, and experience beautiful British Columbia. Register to become a member, and you also get included 2 upcoming winter workshops and access to Dr. Sasha Chato's phenomenal year-long undergraduate level course to introduce you to the academic study of Western esotericism. This is not even available at universities at the undergraduate level, but will be included now for everyone who registers to EnochiaCon 2025 before July. Tarry not and sign up today. Go to EnochiaCon.com or ArcaneResearchSociety.com for more information.
Very cool.
There it is, folks.
I think I should go to that.
You. I sincerely hope that I have all my ducks in a row for the night you land on the 10th, so I can meet you at the airport and give you a proper Vancouver welcome, if you know what I mean.
That will be awesome. And I was going to say,
which is a hug that lasts way too long.
Well, you know, I'm an old neo-pagan, so I'm not a stranger to hope.
Yeah. Yeah, it's gonna be fun. Quite the list of people wanted to be involved, and people have said, "How did you get those people?" And I'm like, honestly, I didn't. I just if you build it, they will come. And you know, when people like David Rankine said they wanted to be a part of it, and I was like, "Yeah, what can you say?" You know, absolutely. Right. There's just it really was it was as good an idea as I always thought it was. So I'm very excited about that.
Yeah, I'm maybe meeting several people there that I've known for years online, but we finally get to meet them face to face. Is Justin Sledge, is he going to be there, or is he going to be zooming in?
No, he's
awesome.
He's there. He flies in the same night as you.
Oh, awesome. You know? Okay.
Yeah, like I perhaps. Yeah, I mean, perhaps we can go to dinner or something, depending on, it might be late and you guys might need to rest, but yeah, we don't start the next day till late afternoon, so there's plenty of time to rest and go for a walk or have, you know, do whatever. It really is an amazing city. Otherwise, if it wasn't an amazing city, everyone would have fled due to the rent. You know, it's not a city you can live. You can't live here anymore. Don't try and live here. Everyone, it's rough. And that could change. The reason I'm critical of my country is because I want it to change. Some people say, "Oh, if you're so critical of Canada, you should just leave." It's like, what? No. We're meant to fight for our countries, right? And this is my home.
I've always likened that to walking up to somebody's house, and you kind of look over and you see smoke pouring out of a window, and you bang on the door and you go, "Dude, your house is on fire." And he goes, "You know what? If you don't like my house, you can just move on down the street, pal." And you're like, but your house is on fire. Okay.
We got a funny number from someone posted here. They gave us a 93 and a 770. And the 770, a lot of Golden Dawners think is a Golden Dawn thing, but it's not. It's a thing from my old order with my dear estranged godfather, Mr. Zink. So that's but a lot of people still think it's a traditional GD thing.
93 I'm familiar with. I don't know this. 777 I know that.
And it's odd to see 93 with 770 because we famously didn't allow any Thelemites into our order, which I now think was a mistake because I didn't understand the OTO and Thelema well enough at the time. And it really does violate our promise to not discriminate based on religion, to disallow them due to being Thelemic. But the reason we didn't let them in is because all they wanted to do generally was talk about Crowley.
Well, there is, like you said, you've got to be open and you don't want to betray your principles, but at the same time you have to be willing to get someone who comes in, and it's not just Crowley. I mean, even in the HOGD we have people come in and it's just not they just don't fit there. They're wanting to do other things. They're wanting to do Thelema, or they're wanting to do Buddhist, or they're wanting to do Theosophy, or they're wanting to do, and it's just they're just not fitting. And it's better for them to go where they're being called. Like for instance, when I give consultations to people, there are many seekers, striving magicians, student magicians that I talk to, and when I consult with them, I try to find out what their personality best fits. Like I'll tell them you need initiation, and this isn't every case, but if I have a client who needs initiation, I'll tell them that it doesn't matter if it's Golden Dawn, Thelema, Wicca. I'm directing you toward initiation, but I'm not going to champion my system over something else that might be a better fit for you. And I'm not going to tell you that, oh well, Thelema is a bunch of nonsense, so avoid that and go do Golden Dawn instead, because you may be better fit for Thelema. And I've met people that I knew that they were going to eat Thelema up. That was exactly what they were attuned to, and they would be absolutely bored in the Golden Dawn. And I've met people the other way around, that they would go to Thelema and just feel like it was a party, and they were looking for something more like Masonry. They wanted something more down to earth kind of thing. And I've met people that are just better suited for Wicca and neo-paganism than the Hermetic stuff. So you got to go where you're called to go.
And I've had OTO friends in town explain to me that OTO was meant to be somewhat more similar to Masonry than, say, the Golden Dawn, because it's a lifelong fraternity that you don't graduate from. You never burn your motto or anything.
It existed before Crowley came along, so it was already a fraternity.
It existed in a very different form, of course, and Steiner was involved in that.
It's kind of like what the SRIA is to the Golden Dawn. It was an already established fraternity, but that it's very in tune with what Golden Dawn is and does. So you get a lot of crossover. A lot of people that are members of both.
Yeah, I had my breakthrough experience, I guess, because I lived in an OTO house when I was 10. Did not go well. But then when I was 30, I moved in with my girlfriend in Belfast in a big mansion, and it was an OTO oasis, not with the main OTO, but with one of the branches that had split off. And there was AA adepts there and OTO adepts, and they were nice. They were great. I went to their Lunasa games they had. They were great, and they actually asked me to do some classes. So I did some classes with one of the younger members and taught the history of magic. Giving them a bit of that idea of this movement from Assyria, all the whole movement, the sweep from its origins and stuff. Just things that the average person doesn't really have a big picture view of. But that's something that because we never had an undergraduate intro survey course to Western esotericism before, unlike we do now. Everyone who's conference gets stuff potato course for 2-semester course for free, which is really I'm very proud of the deal we struck to do that, make that happen, because it's quite what could be better than all the occultists around today having, a bedrock of knowledge in that form of a survey undergrad level academic course. If every occultist within the first 5 years had something like that in their back pocket, if they had that knowledge, how much would all of us level up? The whole culture would level up to a whole nuanced kind of understanding. And we'd have a much stronger common base of knowledge based in facts rather than, as much as I love it, the sort of Llewellyn 90s New Age history books that were, they've admitted themselves that they published things that were not, that weren't really, it was kind of loosey-goosey. And I knew we got Douglas Munro's 21 Lessons of Merlin.
Oh my God.
Right. I love that book. I'm probably going to rebuy it.
There's a lot of people that started there and loved it. I was a Don Craig guy, so.
Me too. I still got my second edition. And Don Craig taught in our order, right? He taught in our order in the early days in LA, right before my time. I never got to meet him, unfortunately, but he came out of the Chris Monastra world. And you just posted something about Chris Monastra that was really historically interesting about the, because that's something a lot of us don't know about too much, is the origin of the, of your order and the early days of Chick and Tabby and Regardi. And how that's not, no one's written a history book
all
on
of that somewhere. I think Chick has,
of course.
But I forget where it was. I forget where. Yeah. Okay. I'm gonna have to look into it now to see where he published that, but I know he told the story at one point.
He's written a lot of books.
Yeah, I know. That's the thing. They've written so much; it's hard to keep up. They're about to come up with a new book now.
Oh yeah, what's it?
Yeah, the Golden Dawn Magic. I'm a little confused because their last book was on like Inner Order Magic, so it was what most people think of when they think of Golden Dawn Magic. So your pentagram rituals and all that stuff, your openings by Watchtower. But now they're doing another book on Golden Dawn Magic. So I don't know if it's a sequel to that one or if this is a whole different direction. I honestly have not, they have not told me. So I'm as interested as anyone else to know what the heck is. I just know it's on Golden Dawn Magic and that everyone's excited about this one. So it's going to be good. But I know Chick has written about this and I don't even know if it was no, I think it was. I want to say it was either in like the Middle Pillar or the Garden of Pomegranates. I swear it's in one of those two where they were writing a lot of their own biographical information. But it's still obscure. A lot of people don't know where the modern HOGD came from, and there was a lot that went on. And when it came to Chris Monastra and some stuff that went down, after we actually can't talk about some of that stuff due to court filings and stuff. So wow. Yeah, there was a lot of drama that went. I don't want to like leave it too blank so people imagine the worst. It just had to do with the use of the name because Chick and his wife at the time, not Tabitha but Eva, the one who's mentioned in that postcard that that I just posted. Chick, his wife, and Chris Monastra were the three people who founded the HOGD. And there were some drama that happened where Chris basically went off on a roll. And like when you came in, you would have been in that separate group. And when they first did that, they made the weird decision, and I do not understand it to this day. It seems so weird to me. They decided to make a written agreement to share the name Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. Why not just pick another name? I mean, I don't get it. But that document became an albatross around Chick's neck for a long time. Because like I said, this is the stuff I can't get into because that document got into somebody else's hands and it turned into a whole big old snafu. But the drama had a lot to do with Chick trying to dissolve that contract to share the name so that we would have full control of the name HOGD and no one else could go out there claiming to be us or be connected to us, or at least let people at least not be willing to disabuse people of the illusion that they are connected to us and cause trouble. So Dee wanted that dissolved, and he did. He got that And once that contract was dissolved, that was the end of it. There's been no further court anything. So anything you've heard about, Chick trying to control the copyrights or Chick trying to, secure the trademarks and everything so that he could make money off the GD, none of that ever happened. He just went to court to dissolve that contract. And once that was dissolved, he went home. He has the trademarks for the Golden Dawn here in the States. Somebody else has it, or at least the last I heard, somebody else has it overseas.
Griffin has it in Europe and Canada.
Yeah, and so that's just where things stand, and that's all I got to say on that matter. It's a lot less dramatic. I mean, there was a lot of drama. I mean, there was drama going on way before I got involved because I came in the late 90s. I mean, I did Abermelon in 97, and by 1998, I had joined the Golden Dawn. So I came in that late. And all the stuff with Chris Monastra and everything that happened with, the schism between Chick and Chris and sharing the name, that all happened way before I came in. Like I want to say it might have been as much as 20 years before I came in. I might be over projecting that, but it could have been. It could have been as much as 20 years. Because again, I'm late 90s. I'm a pup in this stuff.
Yeah.
As far as getting in, and then I came into what, and I hate using this term, brother. I hate it, but they called them the Golden Dawn Wars. That's where I came in. The Golden Dawn Wars.
That was my era as well, and
that was terrible.
And last time when you were on, actually,
it really wasn't.
That's what you said last time you were on, and I didn't want to push back too much, but what I wish I had said to you the first time you were on the podcast was when you said there wasn't really a war. I definitely agreed with you because it wasn't what people imagine it to be. But I wished I had said
conflict. Yeah.
I wished I had said that, well, you were lucky to have not been caught in any of the crossfire then, because there was stuff.
I was very aware of some of the stuff that was going on.
Yeah,
I knew a lot. Let me put it this way: even as late as I came in, I became privy to a lot more of what was really going on, just because I was there present next to Chick and Tabitha as they were dealing with all of this, And I know, I say it wasn't a war because I was fighting even at that time. People who were hostile wanted everyone to believe that there was these factions of Golden Dawners who were warring with each other, and it just wasn't like that. It was all stupid little things. And I saw some pretty nasty stuff that took place, and became privy to some stuff that had taken place even before I got involved. And I'm not going to make it sound like it didn't get nasty at times, but it wasn't. One of the big smoke screens at the time was just that the entire Golden Dawn had devolved into this big war, and we were all suing each other in court and all that, and we really weren't. Most of the Golden Dawn community was getting along just fine.
Chick used to call in at our day C when we would go down, our Temple to Hootie, we'd go down to LA and we do our thing. Chick would call in and do a conference call, and we'd all talk there was even people would even hope hey, maybe one day we can even collaborate more or something like that. And Chick's gone back to the splinter orders run by TDL Ramses and done presentations since then, So no, it was really us against the people who wanted to make it the tradition only theirs. It was Griffin. He wanted it to just be his thing. And that's why he broke into our temple during a neophyte initiation and disrupted our neophyte initiation. He broke in and assaulted our sentinel and got forced out at the point of a claymore because we wouldn't bow down before him. And of course, the version of that story he told to Yeshi was that we let him into the temple. He stood on the throne of the Hierophant, cursed us, and then our temple fell. That's the version he told Yeshi, which is absurd. That's like a Crowley kind of story, because we think we stopped a neophyte initiation, let you in, and you walked in your shoes, and the Hierophant just got off his throne. I put down my Cancellarius scepter, and we just let you curse us. Yeah, that happened. Yeah, for sure. Right.
And honestly, and when I say there wasn't a Golden Dawn Wars, that's the kind of thing I'm trying to combat, is this mythologization of, that we all hate each other and we're all doing these over the top things against each other, and that we were all, and no, it just wasn't happening,
Well, imagine Imagine like D 400 years from now, what's the version of this story if we weren't doing all these crazy podcasts getting into the granular aspects of it like we are now? Imagine if all there was diary entries and like hearsay, how this story would be told 400 years from now, right? It gives you some perspective on the lives
the way
of
of magic for a long time. Even the early Golden Dawn, we hear legends and hearsay and rumors about what Crowley and Mathers did and their magical war with each other, and they probably weren't doing half that stuff, but
yeah,
you just give it time, and the stories just grow, and
it's not like there's bad blood now. Like I have lots of friends who are in Griffin's Order now. Like
you said about Chick doing conferences and stuff, he's always been that way. If you're out there doing the work, he doesn't care about anything else. He really doesn't, and he doesn't want like the reason that the HOGD gives licenses. I think I keep using license. I don't think that's the right word because they're not licenses.
Charter?
It's like a certification. No, It's not a charter. Okay. It's not a charter because like you can set up your own Golden Dawn group and do your own thing. You have no connection to us. We're not in charge of you. So, we're not warranting your temple. We're not giving you a charter. Tabitha's clear. It's not a license, but we do give you a piece of paper that basically says you are allowed to use anything that we have copyright or trademark to. As long as you're really doing the work, that's all they care about. And they will give you that piece of paper. And the only reason they give that to you, it has nothing to do with their own ego. The only reason they give that to you is to stop anyone else from coming to knocking on your door and saying, why are you using Golden Dawn material? I want money, or I want to shut you down, or I want to seize all of your books and all of your furniture. And then you can just say, you know what, get bent, because the Ciceros, gave us I think it's called certification. They gave us a certification. We can use their material. So bye. And at once Chick started doing that. Once I say Chick and Tabitha started that. And once they started handing out those certifications, all the lawsuits and all this nasty stuff that I said I saw happen, usually that's what it was. People going to groups and saying, no, we own this. You can't do this. And trying to either seize control of it or shut it down. And that stopped. That stopped when the Cicero HOGD started protecting people, just giving them the permission to use what we have the license, what we have the trademark and copyrights to. So that's been his, and other than that, he'll come and do lectures for you. He'll come and work with you. He's gotten more closed off as he's gotten older than he ever was back in those days where everyone was, so up in arms about who owned the trademarks and who was suing who in court and spreading BS stories about Golden Dawn factions that were warring with each other and putting up web pages listing me and several other Golden Dawn leaders as secret Nazis who were, that was one of my favorites, by the way. I hope that's still up because that was so hilarious. That was one of my favorites. It had me running like the entire southeastern neo-Nazi or conglomeration. I'm like, wow, man.
Well, you are white.
I was like, yeah, I'm about as white as it gets. I'm so white the computer screen's got me looking blue.
I think you're.
Yeah, it was just a weird time, man. It was weird.
It was wild. Alt magic.
It was wild. So
yeah.
Alt magic was just terrible. I'm so glad.
I never went on it ever. I was I would hear people talk about it, and they'd be like, "You should get on it." I was like, after everything you just said about it, you think I should spend time on that rather than doing ritual work and studying grade material? Come on. Yeah,
that was the one good thing about the way social media developed is it didn't allow for that kind of alt magic thing. People tried to start that on Facebook and it got shut down real fast. It just went nowhere on Facebook because you kind of have to own what you say on Facebook, and on alt magic, a guy could sit there and make 30 different alternate accounts, 50, 100, 200, 1,000 if he's got the time, and just sit there and I saw threads in there in alt magic back in those days that I know was one person talking to himself under about 5 different accounts.
I can tell you who that was.
Bizarre. I could tell you several people who did that kind of thing. And I'm not going to. I don't want to mention names. I won't talk about names.
Well, I mean,
but all I can say, it was a ridiculous time. It was a bunch of childish nonsense. So while there were nasty things going on, I just hate people getting into their head that there was these magicians were just at war with each other, you know. But yeah, there are stories. There are stories of just some bizarre stuff that went on back in those days.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad we got to do the 90s thing, honestly. I'm glad we were there for it because, you know, there was something to it.
That kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, the nice thing about that era was before social media and before things like YouTube and stuff, that it was a more in-person era. Like if you didn't get together with people in person and do stuff with them, you weren't really doing stuff, you know, like you couldn't really do the cyber magic thing so much back then,
right? Yeah,
you know, it took 20 minutes to load one photo, so like the last thing you could be doing is chatting like this, right? I remember even
you're not going back far enough. I mean, you're not even going back to where before we had the computers at all. I mean, when I first started seeking, just finding other people was like the hardest thing. You'd spend years looking just to find other people who were interested in the same thing, let alone any resources for learning any of this stuff. It's a whole different world back then. But yeah, so the social media has been both a boon and a negative. It's had ups and downsides, but you know, I guess everything in life does.
Yeah. Well, I'm grateful for the internet. You know, maybe it will lead to our ultimate destruction or something, but like,
we'll do that with or without the internet, I'm sure.
I know, right? We're good at that. Humans, we're good at surviving.
I just hope when the AI takes over, it likes us and considers us cute pets. That's all I hope.
You know, I actually asked. My 90% of my ChatGPT use is honestly, believe it or not, for recipes and cooking. As a celiac, I'm always looking for creative ways to figure out how to make different meals with the same basic ingredients. It's not easy, but challenges my creativity, which is fun. And you know, when you work since COVID, my whole life has been working at a computer because, you know, the in-person thing went away and now I'm stuck. I'm stuck doing this now, which is fine, which is great. Actually, the independence that it's going to give me for the rest of my life is not a bad thing, right? To be going from church to church or weird job to weird job was always a little stressful. Or being, you know, as I was a musician most of my life, but like the ChatGPT, I made a joke when I was asking about something to do with like slow cooking ribs or something, and I made a joke, and it responded, and I said, "We're cooked, aren't we? Our humans are cooked, aren't they?" And it gave me the most fascinating response about human creativity, human resilience, all this stuff, you know. And I was actually floored. I was floored by its response. And it basically was like, yeah, don't underestimate yourselves based on what I know. And that's a lot, I think. It does have access to a lot of data. It's like, yeah, you don't know what's going to happen. And that was nice. That was nice to hear those sort of Kierkegaardian uncertainty and faith. Just like, you got to take the leap. You don't know what's going to happen. Have faith. And I thought, that's beautiful. I can totally worship you. I see now that you are God, great AI. That was such a deiform answer.
In that same vein, the most impactful statement I've ever heard also came from an AI, but a fictional one. So I think a human wrote the line. And it was in Avengers Age of Ultron.
Awesome.
Did you see that movie?
I just rewatched the
Did you? Okay. Saga. So you know,
we just rewatched the Infinity Saga this year. It was good.
You know the scene where they've defeated Ultron. They've wiped out every bot that had rolled. There was only one bot left.
I love that we're talking about Marvel.
And yeah, Ultron.
I love it.
And this one last body comes and has a face-to-face with the Vision. And he looks at Vision and he goes, he says, "They're doomed, you know." And without missing a beat, he didn't have to think about it at all. Without a heartbeat of a pause, Vision goes, "Yes, but a thing is not beautiful because it lasts. And I was like,
chills.
Whoa, who wrote that? Who wrote that? Because
certainly not the writers
right
Marvel
there,
has these days.
Man, that hit me right, because, you know, I struggle with the human race, you know, especially lately. And you can see how we're basically heading straight toward our, you know, you can see how we're trying real hard to wipe ourselves out here. And that line, I think I heard that line just when I needed to. You know, that hit me at a time when I was asking that question. They're doomed, you know. And in my mind, I was kind of coming to that acceptance, you know, leaving behind the, maybe we'll make it. We're going to make it, you know, and no, yeah, we're probably not going to make it. So if that's how you feel about it, then what does that mean? Especially for a magician, for a priest, you know, if you're going to take that nihilistic view, it doesn't matter anyway. We're all doomed, you know. But I didn't want to take that nihilistic view, so that I'm not that way. So how do you, where in your brain does that land? And that line is what made it land for me. The thing is not beautiful because it lasts. I mean, the human race isn't going to be here when the heat death of the universe happens either. So if we last another 100 years or 1,000 or 1,000,000, it doesn't matter. But that doesn't mean there's not beauty here. That doesn't mean there's not a lot worth experiencing and enjoying and even fighting for while we're here, because it matters to us now.
And where's beauty on the tree?
Yeah, right in the center. Balance. You know,
it's in some ways, the more I read actually of the Golden Dawn manuscripts, the more I realize that in a way, I know what some people are going to say, but in a way, Tiferet is more important than Kether.
I don't know how anyone could come at you for that statement. I mean,
you know,
our perspective, absolutely. Kether is unity. I mean,
Ipsissimus is greater than Adeptus Minor, someone might say. How can you say that? But no.
That's nonsense. That's nonsense. The tree is a model of the universe. And when you're at Kether, you're still at unity. You haven't even separated from God yet. Nothing is discernible in Kether. It is pure blinding white light. And you don't even get the first discernment. When the point first splits into two and you get a line, doesn't even happen until Chakma. And then you're playing in Binah. And then the actual manifest universe doesn't even come into existence until, Tiferet. I mean, it starts to really formulate in Chesed and Gevurah, but it does not manifest until Tiferet. And when we look up, and this is very Gnostic, when you look up and you see God, like the highest God that your monkey brain can even hope to comprehend, at its most highest philosophical, is the Logos. We can't comprehend the highest God. If we did, our heads would explode. That is beyond us. Infinite potentiality. It's just we can't comprehend that. But we can comprehend a little bit of God, and that's what we call the Logos, the Christos. And that's Tiferet. When you pray to God, you're praying to that's where your prayer is going, to Tiferet. That's where Christ is. That's where, that's where what is spiritual becomes physical, coming down, and what's physical becomes spiritual, moving up. So, I mean, that's the heart and soul of the whole thing. So, yeah, Tiferet, for us, from our perspective, that is the whole thing. That's the whole key. That's where we're headed.
Also, when you think of people get a very, I think, misunderstanding of the underlying theology of the Tree of Life when they look at the tree diagram, whereas if you look at the older diagrams of the concentric circles, you realize that it's not about things being separate, it's about everything emanating from one single point. And that So Kether is everywhere. Kether's in Tiferet. Everything's in everything. Right. You can experience Kether anywhere on the tree. You can experience almost the fullness of God at any point, anywhere. And in the Golden Dawn system, of course, we make that actually subtly, well, maybe not so subtly, very clear through the nature of the exercises, of the meditations, of the affirmations, right? Like, in Neophyte, you're not contemplating being far from the garden of the happy and hoping to get into the realm of the sacred. No, you're contemplating the monad, and then the presence of the Shekinah on earth.
Just one little point.
And it's like that's like so your first meditation is one that unites Kether with Malkuth, and you know, when I've talked to other friends in other GD orders, other fellow adepts, and you know, on the podcast, and they've said, you know, you don't need all this stuff. You could just meditate on the point and that's it. It's like, yes, of course you can. Of course you can. You know, if you're not into Kabbalah, if you're not into ritual meditation, yeah, you could just go,
and it's important
all the way.
You know,
you can to see the world in a grain of sand, like William Blake said. Yeah.
Well, you know, and from the Buddhist perspective, you know, calm abiding, the true silence of the mind. Like in the West, we say meditate, and often what we mean is contemplate. Like, hey, I'm going to meditate on this problem. No, that you're going to contemplate the problem and work it out. But true meditation is silence. So when you do that point meditation, that's what you're going for, is true silence. And that's hard to achieve. But then, of course, you're in a Hermetic path. You're not in a Buddhist path. So once you get to that point and you can generate that silence, then you're going to go to the next meditation and expand that point. And then you're going to go to the next meditation, expand that. And you're just unfolding things, you know, like that Calvary cross. You unfold the cube into that Calvary cross until you get to Tiferet. So, yeah, it's... the single pointed is important, but when it comes to, because you brought up like, well, how is Episimus and all of these higher grades not, you know, more important than Adeptus Minor in Tiferet? I think Chick makes a very good point here, and he always reminds people that when you're dealing with the grades in the Golden Dawn, you're not dealing with the single tree divided into 4 worlds model. You're dealing with the 4 worlds model where each world has a full tree. And when you're going up the grades in the Golden Dawn, you're going up the tree of Asaya. Actually, they overlap because you go up the tree of Asaya until Adeptus Minor, and then you hop into Yetzirah. And now you're on that tree because they show the model where the trees overlap with each other. And so you jump into so compared to Kether of Kether, or even compared to, let's say, just say Tiferet of Benon, your Episimus grade is literally nothing compared to that. So people put a lot of and I'm going to say self-importance. They want to feel very important for these big grades, and they're really not as big as you think, because you're actually on the lower trees. The grades only apply to the lower trees. So, you know, the archangels are up there. Oh, you're a Episimus, are you? Oh, isn't that cute? You know, they don't, you know, they're impressed that you did the work to get to Episimus, but they're not impressed by the grade. They're not impressed by the title, you know.
Well, I think Fade Ra in New Zealand had a whole separate temple for the Ipsissimus grade and for all the higher grades up to Ipsissimus. That's what it seems to be the case from what I've heard. But one of my favorite things is something Nick Farrell revealed in his Beyond the Sun history of the New Zealand group, which was that a lot of adepts apparently, and he's got documents to show this, rejected going beyond Adeptus Minor because they were like, Adeptus Minor is the last magical grade. The rest are just mystical. We don't need that. It's just like, you know, you can do that on your own. You don't need to go through the whole like preparations and, you know, write your motto on a moonstone and all that. And I thought that was hilarious. Like, can you imagine, like, but there is something to that, having, gone to, you know, once you've gotten to Adeptus Minor, you do part of the alchemy of that grade is to realize stuff like that. And I think a lot of people, you know, especially young people, might need to achieve, you know, people who get attached to titles and rank, they're people who I think often haven't ever felt validated just in being even a human necessarily. So those things you need to sometimes make some accomplishments before you realize that's not what this life's about. And so that's where I think it's important for us to, you know, be compassionate. I always like the phrase we would say in our order. I don't know where it came from, but we would say it all the time. Maybe if we didn't make it up, maybe you know where it's from. But people would often say, "The adept never quitteth Yesod." Have you heard that ever before?
Not that one, but we have.
But
a
you get the
one, you know, that you never stop being a neophyte.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That
That's my favorite, actually.
You talk about the concentric circles. Well, you're always a neophyte. Think of the grades as concentric circles moving inward instead of outward. You start as a neophyte, and then you move to the next circle. You're still in the neophyte circle, and you may be doing the Theoricus work, but you're still a neophyte. And then you move into the next grade, and you're still a Theoricus and a neophyte. And now,
I tell my students the biggest mistake they could make is believing that when they move on to the next grade, they're no longer the previous grade.
Right. You are always the previous grade. It's just like in the martial arts. You never stop being a white belt. You never stop being a yellow belt. You never stop being an orange belt. You're always those things. So you just add the next. And when you're in a grade, you're not really. It's just okay. Like I love using martial arts for this. You walk in off the street. Hey, I want to sign up for your martial arts class. Cool. Here's your white belt. They just handed you a white belt. You know nothing. You haven't even taken your first class yet. They just handed you a white belt because you paid for the class. So when you go out there and you tell your friends, hey, I'm a white belt in karate, what are you telling them? What are you saying? That you know literally nothing. So when you go to the next grade and they give you the yellow belt, what are you actually a master of? The white belt. You're not a yellow belt. You're a master of the white belt. And it's the same way with the Golden Dawn. If I'm a Theoricus, I'm not a master of the Theoricus material. I am a master of the neophyte material. And then when I move on to Practicus, I'm not a master of Practicus. I've mastered Theoricus. So that's and the reason it sounds like nitpicking, but it really speaks to the people who focus on the grade. Well, I'm a Practicus. Well, that means you don't know anything about the Practicus grade. You were literally handed the title of a Practicus, which I think, is that Prius or Rejectus, or is that Theoricus? I always get them mixed up. But you're handed that title upon setting foot in the temple. You haven't even been handed your grade packet yet. So don't be too proud of your grade title, because your grade title says you know nothing about that grade. So that's just one way of looking at it, and keeping yourself.
You made me realize something when you're saying that. Like when I was 7, we moved from the small Japanese fishing village I grew up in called Steveston, which is an hour outside of Vancouver, and it was a beautiful place to spend. It's made famous in the show Once Upon a Time. If you've ever seen Once Upon a Time, that place.
I used to watch that all the time.
Yeah, so that's that little town that they're in. That's where I grew up, Steveston. That's where I used to drive my big wheel.
Okay.
Yeah, in 1984, you could have seen, if you went there,
right,
you would have seen me. You would have seen me hauling ass down Gary Street in my big wheel, like a boss. That was my childhood, And
awesome.
We moved to North Vancouver so I could attend Waldorf school. And that was when I got to finally do martial arts class, which was my dream, right? Because, I had obviously since age 3, I had been a Ninja Turtle. But when I was 7, I actually got to go to I finally got to go to an actual karate class with my dad. And no belts or martial arts accomplishments I've ever achieved ever felt as good as when I got that white belt. I felt that was the proudest moment of my physical achievement in my life. Even more proud than
I didn't mean to ruin your childhood.
No, you didn't. No, you made me realize how because I think that's what it is. The most important part of that process of my journey in the martial arts was the beginning, was the first step. That was the greatest achievement, was that first step. And I just realized that when you were,
understand, like that first day I was neophyted, that oh my God, I'm sitting here with these people, like I'm one of them or something, It's, I'll be honest with you, I almost ran.
Really?
We were sitting around. If you know anything about the HOGD and the Mother Temple, the big round table that we all sit at and eat spaghetti. And I'm sitting there eating my first spaghetti. That's the real initiation, is having what we call chicky sauce, is the spaghetti. And so I'm eating my spaghetti I'm eating this for the first time. Well, he's an Italian, so he cooks up a whole big old pot of spaghetti for everyone. And I'm just sitting there listening to people talking, and Tabby kept saying, "Well, now that you're in, da 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 da. Well, now that you're in, da 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 da." She kept making that, and it's like the whole weight of what I had just done just hit me like a ton of bricks. Like, this wasn't just running off to go to, you know, Disney for a day. This wasn't just, hey, you know. And back then, if you remember the culture of the 90s, people used to talk about, oh, I'm gonna go get my knit. Oh yeah, we're gonna go over and get a knit in this group. We're gonna go get a knit in this group. No one took initiation serious, you know. And I went to this place that I took very seriously, you know, and I was having the time of my life with these famous people. But just this concept, you're in now. Now that you're in, now that you, oh my God, I'm actually part of something a lot bigger than me now. And I swear to God, it took all my strength not to just go, could you guys excuse me? And then just walk out the door and then just hear the tires peel out as I got the hell out of it. But I didn't. I sat there and I stayed, and I've stayed for, God, 25 years, I think it's been now. So, but yeah, there was that moment when it hits you and you're like, what? I mean, there's the good part of it. I can't believe I'm here. This is the biggest step of my life. This is what I've dreamed about. You know, I can't believe this. And then there's also the, oh my God, what the hell am I going to do? What have I gotten myself into? Oh, it's a roller coaster. It's definitely a roller coaster. But yeah, I never could see. We have a thing in our order. You know, when you become hierarchs, you're called honored hierarchs in the temple. When you have to be a 4 = 7, and that's where you gain the title honored. And then of course when you go into the 5 = 6, you're an honored frater. And then you're a very honored frater. And then of course the heads of the order are greatly honored. And the one thing that we like to stress is it's not honorable. You are not called honorable, very honorable, or greatly honorable. You are called honored, meaning you are honored to hold that title. You should be humble. You should be floored that you get to hold that title. You shouldn't, you know, we're not here to kowtow to you and call you your honor and, you know, oh, now you've got this title, you're a great thing. No, you have been honored by getting to hold this position and this title and have this responsibility in the temple. And because, you know, once you become a 4 = 7 and you're an honored frater or soror, you now have a role of teaching in the temple. You have a role of keeping the neophytes in the hall in line as you're doing the rituals and showing them how to do the things that they need to do out in the hall. And it's a big responsibility, you know, and that's why we call you an honored frater or soror. And that it's important to keep that mindset all the way up to greatly honored. You know, Chick and Tabitha are very honored to do what they do and to help the people that they help. And they've never, in the 25 years I've known them personally, have I ever seen them lord that over anyone or operate out of ego in any way because of any title they hold or any position that they hold. And that's what I think we should all be emulating, you know. So that's what I have to say on ego where it comes to grades. And it's just, I'm only interested, and I think the spirits and the angels who are linked to the system are only interested in whether or not you do the work. And that's what impresses them. That's what's going to impress the other adepts. That's what's going to, you know, we were very sensitive to people who just come to the temple. And remember how we were talking about sometimes you have to tell people to move on? We do have people who just come to the temple and it's just a social thing for them. And they just sit there and they don't. Chick gets really irritated when they want to talk about anything but magic, you know. They just want to talk about gossip this and politics that and this. And he's like, why aren't you people coming here to talk about magic? He'll get on to us. Talk about magic, people.
Well, that's something that we avoided that by creating the culture from the top down. Like, so if all the top people were only talking about magic, if someone brought up politics, we'd look at them like, you know, they you know, like they were some alien species that landed on the wrong planet and be like, let's check out this thing in the zone. You know, it's like it just didn't fit. And there's the other thing that
we don't devolve into political discussions at Temple, but it does irritate the crap out of Chick when we do, because he does want us to talk about magic, you know. and he does want to see us. And his main thing is he wants people that do the work. Like, you can be totally quiet. That'll even impress him more. If you come to temple and you never say a word, but you're passing tests with flying colors and you're doing the work and you're handing in your projects, and that's what, and not just Chick and Tabitha, but like I said, the angels and the spirits of the system, they're not interested in the blowhards. They're interested in the people that are doing the work and seeing it affect their lives in positive ways, and who are willing to, you don't have to do this. I mean, there are people who come to the order and they have their own lives and they just do this kind of on the side. But if you're called to do it, then the angels and the spirits, they want to see you take a role in the temple and teach other people and pass the tradition. I wrote a whole. Did you read my piece in the re-release of the big red brick Golden Dawn? I think that it was an essay I wrote for the beginning of the book. It's called The Hermit's Lamp.
Do you mean
the whole
the
essay
seventh,
is about that?
Do you mean Greer's 7th edition?
Oh, I've got it back here, but I can't see it from this angle. But yeah, there's a big red doorstop Golden Dawn, and they just, or is it? No, I think it's black. I think the cover's black. I'm sorry, but it was a re-release of what used to be the red doorstop, and they kind of updated a lot of it. And
I have the red doorstop right here, but it's from the early 90s.
It's black. I am at a weird angle.
You're not talking about John Michael Greer's 7th edition, right?
No, I'm looking at it here. It's by Weiser, and it does have a black cover. So it's a hardback black cover, and it's got an essay by me in there called The Hermit's Lamp, and that's what that is all about, is carrying the tradition. You know, that's what we're here for, is just to pass the wisdom and the knowledge down to the next generation, you know.
Absolutely.
And that's really what the motivation should be for all of us, everyone in the order.
That's part of our inner order vow, if you don't mind me saying so, right?
You got to be a link in the chain.
Let me put it this way. It's a core promise of any Rosicrucian who values the Fama Fraternitatis in any way, shape, or form. You have to pass on what you know.
And, you know, it's like I teach my students in my Abramelin class, you know, in the book of Abramelin, you can go through all the work to gain the true and sacred magic. And the book says, if you gain it and then you don't use it to help your community in any way, to help others in any way, that you'll lose it. The angels just take it right back from you, because what good is it to bequeath that treasure to you and not make the world a better place, you know? So I think that's what all of us are really supposed to be doing. It's what we should be doing, and it should be what motivates us to heal in that gratis, you know. That's just the key to the whole thing. And you know, the way things are going in the world, we need it more than ever. We're made to feel more irrelevant than ever. We're made to feel like no one cares, you know, like the world's just going to go the way it's going, hell or high water. But it's difficult not to give into that, but we can't, you know. We got to just keep doing, even if it's quiet, we got to keep doing the work, you know. So one thing I've been thinking lately is that things may look dark, but imagine how much darker it looked when Rosicrucianism started. People lived under kings. People lived under situations where you had no rights, you had no hope, you had no money, you had nothing, you know, and people could just do whatever they wanted to you, you know, and they, under those conditions, did the work and held up the lamp and passed it down. So if they could do that then, we can do it under what we're facing now. And that should be our motivation, I guess. Just do the work.
Beautifully said. We have a good question here. Oh yeah, hell in a handbag. Where am I going and why am I in this handbasket?
Yeah, but just do the work. Just keep doing the work, because someone out there needs it. You know, if I hadn't found my life, I'd be dead by now. Yeah.
Dude, I grew up in a yoga cult, and it's funny that basically my life was saved. I was saved from the damages of that cult by joining a different cult. So it's like the saying, you know, it's like the saying that a metal is always purified by a tincture of itself, right? So the answer isn't necessarily to run from the problem. If you have afflicted Gevura, what you need is purified iron. You don't want to. You can't fix afflicted Gevra with Hesed. You don't balance it that way. You purify it from within. Yeah. So that's really interesting.
I teach the same thing. You know,
that, I think I got that from Julius Evola, actually. Controversial.
Yeah, like if you're I don't like that guy. If you're having
not as a person.
Same thing. If you're suffering problems with aggression, with Mars things happening to you a lot, then you don't rush off to Hesed and ask, Zadkiel to fix it. You go, and this is old magic. This is what they did in the old days. Think of Greek mythology and Roman mythology. If a god was angry at you, and by the way, this goes all the way back to Babylon and Samaria. If, let's say, you were afflicted with a spirit, you got sick, and you had a demon. In Babylon, they believe that demons made you sick. I mean, that's still true in a spiritual sense. But you would go to the priest, and the idea wasn't, this evil opposite of God has sent this demon to hurt me, and I need Marduk, God, to free me. You went to the priest of Marduk to ask, why did Marduk send this demon after me? What have I done to make Marduk mad? And then the priest would give you a way to make Marduk not mad at you anymore. And that is how the exorcism works. The demon, that's where they came up with the idea of penance and having the taboo lifted off of you after a taboo had been put on you. But you didn't run to another entity to remove what was afflicting you. You went to the entity that sent it. And so if you have a lot of Mars things happening to you, you go to Samael and you go, dude, why is this happening? And can you maybe stop it? And instead of going to like Zadkiel, because then you're just getting into a war mentality. Well, I'm going to set this angel against this angel, and that's not going to go well for you.
Well, it's like it's all in a human level. It's like if you're having a problem with one person, the solution isn't to go and talk about them to someone else.
You go to them. Yeah.
There you go. There's a very human analogy of that alchemy.
Or even in a legalistic sense, if you're having a problem with your property, you got to go to your landlord, not the landlord of the property next door.
There you go.
You have to go to the one who has jurisdiction to fix what is happening. So yeah, it's hard for some people to wrap their minds around that. They're like, well, if these bad things are happening, why would I go to who's causing it? Well, because that's the one you need to find out what's going on from, and ask, how do I fix this? How do I get back? So I'm not afflicted in this way anymore. And that's, old magic stuff.
I got another question about Philosophus problems for you. Also, I wanted to ask you, after a quick little 1-minute commercial break, if you've checked out the Yehida's complete initiation rituals of the original order, because you and I both know the Stella Matutina stuff better than that stuff, of course. There's also a couple chat questions.
Yeah, for the most part.
If we'll just do a quick 1-minute little commercial break here, and we'll get back to it and just wrap up with a few more questions and answer the audience questions. So people, if you have questions, throw them in now. This is your last warning to ask any questions of us. And so I just have a few last questions of you, and I know it's late, so I don't want to keep you too long, but this has been amazing, man. It was just such an enjoyable chat. And so we'll see you. Yeah, man. I can't believe I'm going to get to see you in a couple of weeks here in Vancouver and show you a city that I've always loved showing to people. I've always loved showing Vancouver, and it's still gorgeous. It's still the sci-fi city. They just finished filming Last of Us here. They film all like the Battlestar was filmed here. Oh yeah, I actually ran into Grace Park from Battlestar once on Commercial Drive and got to give it my best shot. She was very kind to me. I was starstruck, but also like, hey, roll your dice while you got them, eh? Right. I was younger and prettier back then. Okay, we'll be right back, folks. After these messages, type in your questions to Aaron Leitch, and we'll answer them as best you can.
The Arcane Research Society proudly presents Dr. Sasha Chato's Introduction to Western Esotericism, a fully online course with over 45 hours of recorded lectures. Study at your own pace with a course guide, reading lists, and immersive activity packs. Designed for practitioners and for scholars, it's engaging yet challenging, with expert support from Dr. Chato. Watch 2,000 years of esoteric history unfold, from the mystic currents of Hermetism, Neoplatonism, and Gnosticism to the alchemical fires of the Renaissance and the evolving traditions of modern occulture. Uncover hidden truths, debunk myths, and trace esoteric thought through time. With over 20 years in education, a champion of scholar-practitioner dialogue, Dr. Chato has taught this course since 2010 to hundreds of satisfied students. Get this course free with a ticket to EnochiaCon 2025. After that, it's $1,500 Canadian dollars for Arcane Research Society members or 2,000 Canadian dollars for non-members with lifetime access.
That island that you saw at the end is Corfu in Greece, where Dr. Chato lives.
Oh wow!
And the music is me playing this Irish low whistle, and playing the Greek bouzouki. So I did a little ditty for it, just to avoid that copyrighted royalty. Yeah. Every time I use royalty free or like anytime I license music, the person still tries to copyright it. And I have to go through a whole song and dance. So it's like, no, I'll just record it myself. One take each. That's fine.
I don't think they have any good system for knowing who's licensed their stuff. And I think that they just have those those crawlers that just look for it and then just immediately strike it. I don't even think they looked.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So the ad for the conference was in escrow due to someone challenging the copyright. And I was like, well, here's the code. Here's the license code. Yeah, and then they didn't even challenge it, but it removed it damaged things for 2 weeks. So it's a shame what they've done to music in the online world. As a musician, I know very well how badly it's been handled because it was being handled well, and then
I've seen a lot of content creators facing that, and I've seen musicians especially like really having. Like there was this one guy who I forget his name, but he has a YouTube channel where he just goes over these old artists and stuff and the genius of their music and stuff. And he says he was about to close his channel down because how do you put together this whole documentary about the genius of someone's music only to have that person claim your video and try to get it shut down? And he's like, they don't even want me to talk about their music. Why am I doing this? And I felt so bad for him. Just in this emotional moment on that video, and I totally got it.
Well, Frater, I won't content strike you if you ever want to talk about the genius of my music.
Same here. If anyone wants to talk about my books, you can even trash my books. Just get my last name right. It's Leach, not Leitch or Leitch.
Or Leach.
Other than that,
but Leach would be kind of cool. Leach would be at least hardcore. Yeah.
Hey, Leitch has its good things too, but no, I don't. No one has to worry about talking about my stuff and having me copyright them either. So
good, yeah. So I wanted to say before we got too far off it when we were talking about the honored and the titles and stuff that was interesting because one of the thing that really caused me to shut down Temple Tahuti in Vancouver after a really great run. Like we had over 100 active members and it was a 24/7 active temple. It was tremendous amount of work. We were very proud of what we achieved in that time.
Sounds like it.
And it was amazing, man. It was amazing. It was a dream come true. And we made that dream with our own blood, sweat, and tears, really. It was a lot of work. But, Bush got into power, and your country's in trouble when its three leaders are named Bush, Dick, and Colin, of course. Zink got really into Bush and in more than one way. And the Canadians and the Canadian members wanted nothing to do with American politics at all. But what happened was we had quite a pile up of philosophi who couldn't get into Portal. And the reason they couldn't get into portals because they got that honor title and basically stopped doing their rituals, barely wanted to have any involvement in teaching, and they just really felt entitled. And it was this whole little coterie of little grimy, they went from these lovely, beautiful, devotional practici, hardworking, crying all the time, to being like, I'm the best thing since sliced bread, worship me, and it's like, what are you talking about? And then you know, when they didn't get the honor that they thought they deserved from being called honored, they started like writing letters to the inner order, bad-mouthing the adepts of our temple, which of course our inner order just sent to our inner order, just like would send me the emails of them trashing me and the other adepts, being like, yo, you should expel these people, they're nasty. And I was like, oh, I was so young though, I was so silly. I was like, oh no, that would be mean, I don't want to do that. And eventually they forged my signature on the incorporation and bank documents. They forged my signature.
I've run into people in the Western mystery tradition who are very happy, like in private talking to each other. They're very open about it. Oh yeah, I can forge this for you, I can do that. Yeah, I've seen some blood curdling stuff. People that are just openly criminal about what they're doing. I mean, out in public they're acting like they're, you know, pious, but in private they're just criminal, and they're just willing to it's terrible.
But here, it is part of the alchemy of the grade, that challenge, is it not, from your experience? Have you seen something similar to that in philosophy?
It might be a difference in the culture, maybe, but no. In my experience, in my experience in the order, I saw two things, and I'm going to add a third after that. But in Philosophists, I saw two things. You had people that would get stuck there because it was the grade of Venus, and they would just get very creative in that grade and kind of go off on another tangent and just get lost and stop progressing. And then you had people like me and my wife, both of whom Philosophists was a freaking furnace. I mean, we were burned to a crisp. It was the hardest grade we went through, except maybe Portal. But like Philosophists and Portal was just one long nightmare for both of us. I don't know why those grades. And I found that different grades will kind of hit different people in different ways. But for us and for I've seen other people too, they get into Philosophists and it's very, because it's the fire grade and it's just going to burn. You know, it's hot and it's hard to. If you don't get drug away on some artistic thing, then you're in the fire, you're in the furnace, getting ready to be purified into the gold of 5 = 6. But the third thing I said I was going to add is what you're describing. What happens in our order in 5-6, and I'm not talking about the nastiness and the entitlement and the I'm the best now. It just seems like people hit 5-6 and they feel like they've attained. Like they'll work to get through the outer order, and they'll get into 5-6 and it's like, made it. And it's like all the motivation to keep going. And because you've got a whole tree to work up through in 5-6. And then
it's
you've got
problematic
7-4 or
since
6-5 and 7-4.
That's really where the work begins. Like you all of a sudden have to make and consecrate your elemental tools, the Lotus one, the Mars, like so there's so much.
When it comes to
like
real
3
magic,
years of hard work.
Right. All the outer order is for is just to train you to do real magic, to give you the basics, the foundation for real magic. And then in the inner orders,
and develop those relationships, right, with the archangels, with the elementals, with all of those things, because once it actually comes from Levi is the one that laid it all out. He in his work, I want to say it was Initiation into Hermetics, he wrote that that was way Barden. To become an Barden. I don't know why you mean Ritual
Barden.
And Dogma. You mean Ritual and Dogma, yeah?
I hate Barden. I won't even let people talk about Barden in the Solomonic group. But yes, so in that book, Levi wrote, and the one he actually wrote, that the only way to become an adept is to first go through initiations into the 4 elemental kingdoms. And once you've gained your authority over each of those elemental kingdoms, then you're an adept. And that is literally what the adepts who founded the Golden Dawn were reading when they established the grade system. So that's why you go through the 4 elements. And they didn't even have portal at first. It was just the 4 elements and then dump you into 5-6. So yeah, that is the literal philosophy that it's based on, is as you go up the grades. And this is why doing the work is so important, because you're trying to impress these spirits. You need to stand above all these other apes that come along and don't want to do the work, and they just want to take shortcuts. And if you're doing your meditations and doing those rituals and studying your butt off to get all those correspondences and all your grade material packed into your brain, then that impresses them. And when you get into 5-6 and you're doing the real magic, then you actually have built those relationships so that when you call them, they'll come and listen to you and want to work with you. If you just take shortcuts, or you think you can just skip the outer order and just go straight into the inner order, you've built no relationships. Why would any of them have any reason to care what you have to say? So that's why the outer order, even if, not every magical system is going to go through taking you through the 4 elements and then spirit and then into the inner order. And that's why I always say it doesn't matter if you're doing the Golden Dawn's version of initiation or another. It's that you're taking a path of initiation, that you're doing rituals, you're learning all the correspondences, you're expanding your mind, you're getting to know yourself, which is very important, because before you can work with the spirits, you've got to know yourself. And, if you're doing all that and dedicating yourself to all that, that literally sticks you up above all the hordes of other humans that pester these spirits throughout the generations. And then they take an interest in you, like, oh, who's this? And that's when you can start actually accomplishing things with magic, is when they start listening to you and taking what you say seriously.
And do you know that Dr. Terry Burns, I don't think you've done her 50-hour free on YouTube course on the Monas Hieroglyphica, right?
Did you know portions of it, but I haven't done the whole thing.
She has an argument for the elemental progression in the Golden Dawn coming from the Monas, not coincidentally, but explicitly and intentionally, because of Mather's knowledge of the Monas and those guys' knowledge, or Westcott's maybe, or someone. And that's really interesting, right? Because, like, the idea that there's any inkling of the GD system that far back is, of course, for most people, that would be laughable. But,
I don't always agree with what Terry has to say,
right?
But it's always fun for her to explore things. And
she doesn't present.
She's real good at finding connections between things.
And even when her theories are bold, they're not poorly argued.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, yeah, she's about as heavy hitter as it gets, I think.
An interesting bit of trivia on this lecture that I'm about to give. I actually wrote the basis of it maybe 20 years ago. God, it's been a long time. And when you invited me, and I was like, what am I going to give a lecture on? And I decided I want to do something different than just the usual, cipher squares and Angelic, the language and all that. Let's do something a little different. And then I remembered that. And so I was very, very lucky, because I went to my old Yahoo Mail account. Yes, I'm that old. And
I have
you're right.
Don't ask. And I've had that so long that I now have to pay $3 a month to not lose the billion emails that have piled up unanswered.
Right.
I'm just like, there might be a poem in there that I really want, and I'll just keep paying $3 a month, and then
don't take that lightly.
Retired, if there's a good poem, it's worth it. If there's a good song lyric, it's worth $1 million to me.
Right. And you never know, because that's literally the key to this story, is because I went to my old account and I decided to search for, I think I did a couple of keyword searches. I want to say it was the word treasure that finally landed on it. And it was an old email where I had written a short essay on the treasure hunt that Dee and Kelley went on, and emailed it to Terry. And Terry had responded with a lot of her theories and stuff, a lot of which don't appear in the lecture that I'm about to give you. But the reason I had that material to build on is because I had emailed it to her, and she was going to take her material and add it to mine, and we were going to publish that.
Wow. How long ago was this?
20 years ago. And it's somehow we just went in different directions and we never did that essay. So now I'm about to give that. I went ahead and took that and expanded it into the 14 pages of notes that I've got now. And I'm going to give that lecture probably with her in the audience 20 years later. And what I'd like to do is invite her. And when she hears that lecture, I'd like to invite her. I'll send her the lecture. And we'll go ahead and do what we were going to do 20 years ago. And I'll let her add her own prose to it. And so, yeah, a lot of those theories about what Dee and Kelley are up to and stuff. And she and I vehemently disagree on some things, but it's worth exploring, you know, especially in the Enochian system. So she's kind of awesome in that. Even if I disagree with her sometimes, she is awesome in that way. I think she thinks I get more mad at her than I actually do. Because sometimes I'm just like, what are you talking about? You know, but no, it's great to see.
Well, all our reactions online in text seem different than I think they would seem in person. You know, we know this.
Oh, possibly, right? But she just has this way of finding these little connections. You know, she'll take this little figure that's mentioned offhandedly in the journals, and she will find out everything about who that person was and how they played into things and who they were connected to, and it's amazing. I mean, like that's why I say, like, even if I don't always agree with her final conclusions on things, that doesn't mean that she doesn't find some incredible stuff on her journey, on her searches. You know, so yeah, I definitely want. I hope that she'll take this lecture after I give it, and I'll send it to her, and I'd like her to expand it with all her stuff, and then she and I can publish it like we intended to in the first place. That would be awesome.
That would be so great. Yeah, even if her detours don't necessarily connect with the main trail, or, you know, at least it's scenic, you know,
it's
or
definitely
like good exercise, or at least good exercise. Like, you know, she's like, oh, I should say more about parabolas. I'll make a separate video on that. Then you watch the separate video all on parabolas. And she's like, this needed to be a 3-part video on parabolas. And I'm like,
parabola, yeah.
7 a.m. and I've been listening to
that's what she was back in the old days, man. That she and I used to be on back in the old Yahoo groups. Oh there was a group called.
See, I just discovered her 2 years ago.
Oh wow, yeah. There was a Yahoo group called Alchemist Royal Advisor Dr. John Dee. All one word.
Dude.
And that's where she and I in fact, the email I was sending back and forth with her about the treasure hunt originated in that group, in that Alchemist Royal Advisor Dr. John Dee group. So, yeah, her researches in Enochian goes back a long, long way. And I think she was around back even when the Enochian L days. Like, I don't remember her on Enochian L, like with Benjamin Rowe and Clay Holden and all those old guard guys back in the 90s. But I think she was around. I don't remember on that list, but I'm sure she was around then and probably talking to a lot of those same guys, even if not on that group. And for all I know, she was on Enochian L. I just don't remember. But yeah, she's something. I don't know how we got talking about Terry, but she is awesome.
Well, I think it goes without saying how we ended up talking about Terry. There's always. Oh,
it was about the Monas hieroglyph. You brought up the Monas hieroglyph.
Yeah,
you can't bring that up without talking about Terry. Yeah,
she's the queen of the Monas, and
like this. That's a great example. Like, I wouldn't agree with her that the Golden Dawn got its elemental grade structure from the Monas. I would not. But
it's fair to say it seems links. Like a stretch. But that's after hearing her out,
still links that do go back that far. Like, I may not agree with the final premise, but there are links that go, you know, like if you look at the Fama Fraternatus, for example, and at the very end of the Fama Fraternatus, what do we find? What was at the very, very end of that document? The Monas. Yeah, they actually wrote the Monas at the end of it, not the book, but the actual glyph. And if you start looking at possible interrelationships between what John Dee was doing and where he was traveling, and then you start linking that together with what Francis Yates was writing in the Rosicrucian Enlightenment and how Rosicrucianism got started, it's fascinating how you get from Dee to them. I even found links between the Fama and the Book of Abramelin. I've got a whole lecture just on that. Yeah. You remember how in the Book of Abramelin you have that whole first section where Abraham is doing the wandering Jew bit, where he's wandering around looking for the different magical systems, and he meets a Christian, and he spends some time with this Christian, and this Christian is the only out of everyone he met who claimed to know magic. This one Christian was the only one he knew that he felt also had the true and sacred magic, even though he wasn't Jewish. That's in the Book of Abramelin. And if you look at that story and start comparing it to the Fama with the times and places that are being described, the Christian was Christian Rosenkreutz while he was out on his journeys.
Where's my Abramelin? Where's my copy? Here's my copy. I got my copy right here. Well, let me grab it. Okay. Are you serious? That's so wild.
Yes. What? They actually line up. They line up. Christian Rosenkreutz was very likely, or what I figure is that whoever wrote the Fama probably did that on purpose. They wanted Christian Rosenkreutz to appear in other older documents for legitimate.
Oh yeah.
So it was real easy to say that, hey, we had this wandering mystic too, and he was traveling around in the same time and place. And oh look, he kind of was in this town at the same time that Abraham was, and met this really good Christian that he felt had the true and sacred wisdom, so it just, I think they left it as a breadcrumb for other people to find and marvel over. And it just took a few hundred years for anyone to notice.
Well, that's the thing. Like when she talks about the elemental progressions and it being the same as in the Golden Dawn, right? It seems completely absurd at first glance. But then when you consider the actual influence that Dee's Monas and Dee's life and work, not to mention his travels and the personal all the converse. Imagine if you and someone wrote a biography based on just the things we'd written online. Holy shit, would they miss the point of both our lives?
Know nothing about us. Yeah,
they'd be like, these guys are fucking assholes.
That's what worries me about them someday making an AI after I'm dead. Can you imagine them making an AI version of you that is nothing but things you've posted online? But
that's why we need to have these conversations where like you get the full spectrum of our personalities and our souls that come through a bit better. And that's why I do my podcast
so
the way I do
it. Of it behind.
Yeah, that's why I do long form. I do like it's meant to be a shit show. It's meant to be a arcane shit show. My podcast, and I'm proud of it.
I know, because we keep going on so many tangents, and we keep.
Fuck yeah, that's what. I mean, it worked. Like my theory worked. It became one of the biggest podcasts, and so thank you everyone for enjoying the chaotic stylings of. Sure. Well, it's good. Well, I lost like 50% of my audience after interviewing Jason Louvre.
I'm actually not familiar with him, so I wouldn't know.
But whatever, but that's the point, right? I don't want an audience that's like that tells me I can't talk to someone. You know what I mean? Like to me, I can't live in a world in which there's people where people tell me who I can talk to or what I can talk about. I'm sorry. I have to. The intellectual freedom is the most important thing. And plus, if you don't talk with people you disagree with, then I think we're done for. So, what were we saying? Book of Abramelin. Anyway, here's my. This is the only copy of the Book of Abramelin I have. It's very cute. It's the German edition, and I don't know much about Abramelin. The first time I reached out to you when I was in quarantine coming back to Canada during COVID, and I dropped you a message saying I'm interested in your Abramelin course, because I might be stuck at Chris Bennett's Psychedelic Retreat Center for a long time, maybe for a long time.
That sounds familiar, actually.
Yeah, so I did reach out, and that was the first time you probably ever heard my name, honestly, because I don't think people like Eric Cisco or Mark Williams talk about me or anything like that. Friends of mine. Like Mark was my first Enochian teacher. Eric was one time a student essentially of mine. And now we're all friends now. Of course, still, right? They're guys, But so I reached out to you when I was at Chris Bennett's place. I don't know the deal these days, what's going on, but I don't care. And a lot of things happened to me magically during that quarantine. So I didn't end up doing the Abramelin, but I did decide at the end of it that I wanted to do it in German, which I know almost fluently due to Waldorf school. And but I made no contributions until you guys were debating when to start it, and I had the German, so you guys were debating it. So I looked it up, and I was like, no, it says Osten, not Pesach, right? So it starts at Easter. And I was so proud that I had this, and I could make my one little contribution. I
remember that,
you great Abramelin initiates that I may never be. But if I ever do it, I will do it in German. Yeah, that was fun. I was so proud that I could that my years of suffering, die deutsche Sprache, could yield one annual.
That was the one where I was thinking it was a typo or something. I still don't know why he wrote Easter there. That was so weird. I don't know
Passover,
how I got
you
there.
Mean Passover?
Yeah. Well, no, yeah, it should be. It should. Well, Easter. it's because if I'm thinking about the right incident, it was a thing that I posted because it confuses students where it talks about when you're supposed to do the day of consecration, where you're supposed to consecrate everything in the oratory, and you're supposed to do that on the first of the final 7 days. But the way Abraham wrote the passage, he makes it sound like you're supposed to do it on I think at the very beginning of the entire thing, or no, I think it sounds like you're supposed to do it at the end of the first phase, just at the beginning of the second phase. It's something weird like that, but it's because he wrote. It's what I thought was a typo, because he wrote right after, I guess, like, because you had the German and you said that no, he actually did have Oster there. That's actually in the German, and I was thinking maybe it was a typo that Mathers made. But no, it actually goes back to the original. But even though it is in the original, it's still a badly worded. I think Abraham made the mistake.
I believe it's the English translation of this German book by Georg Dehn. Georg Dehn did the German. So the English translation of this, the English translation translates Austin, Easter, as Passover. So it's whoever translated.
I have to look at it again because. Yeah, whichever it was, I remember I had to actually take a photo of the page, and I had to, and I literally marked out on the photo. Cute? It is.
Look how cute the German.
I literally had to mark out that word and write the right one over it and post it into the class group so people would stop getting confused over that, because it's everyone listening is probably like, what the hell are these two talking about? But yeah, I do remember that, and it is an irritating, weird little phrase in the book that confuses students.
Yeah. So did you get a chance to check out Frater Yechida's masterful study of the original GD initiations yet?
I actually don't think so. I don't think I've read that one yet.
When it'll be out.
I want to say the last thing of his I had was the Enochian books that he did.
Oh, those are great. Yeah, those are great.
Yeah. But I don't know if I've had anything of his that he's done since.
Yeah, I'm actually rememorizing the Prayer of the Gnomes because I've been doing the Stella Matutina version my whole life, and I looked at that's the only one of from the pre-Stella Matutina prayers that's radically different. The rest are more or less the same translations from Levi, but the Gnomes one is very different. And I was like, well, let's learn this one, right? But the problem is, now that I'm in the process of learning it, I can't remember either of them, because it's like chaos in my brain.
Yeah, I can see that.
So I don't even I can't even do the one I know by heart anymore in this transitional process. Okay, so you haven't checked out that book. I'm sure you will when it comes around to it. When it comes out paperback.
I don't have the time for reading I used to have, because I used to work overnight, so I would go to work and just sit there, and that's where I do my writing, all my reading, but since I started working for myself, I don't have those free nights anymore, so it takes me a little longer to read books. Poor Alex Sumner, he waited months for me to finally get through that what was it called? It was an Abramelin memoir, but that was the secondary title. What was it called? Anyway, he wrote a book about his Abramelin retreat, and that poor guy waited for months for me to get through that and finally write a review for him. Yeah, I haven't heard from him since. I wonder if I made him mad. I might have pissed him off.
Well, good.
I mean, you know, I wasn't.
I was really excited to meet him, but then he trashed my book and tanked its sales by lying about it. So I have a bone to pick with that man. I'm happy to forgive him, but like I'd love him to be like, tell me why he did that, because it was nasty and it tanked my book. Yeah. And it wasn't true. What he said wasn't true.
I don't know if I wouldn't think my review would have tanked his book, but I don't know.
Well, he was the first commenter on Amazon. He was the first commenter on Amazon, and if someone puts out like you know who did that with Ike Baker's recent Etheric Magic, just started getting him and his students to spam negative comments, I heard. And it's like, wow. Yeah, if you get to it fast enough, you can make the difference of like, it's like at the start of COVID,
bombing.
When COVID happened, all of a sudden I lost my job and they tried to evict me. Actually Gavin Newsom threatened my boss and said had his lawyer say, I'll arrest you if you evict him or anyone else on the property. Because bad enough that we were shut down and couldn't work anymore and had to rely on food banks. I couldn't Canada wouldn't let me return. So if they had thrown me out, I would have been dead. You're dead.
Yeah. Where would you go?
Nowhere. No one will let you in during the
pandemic.
First 2 months of COVID. You were not welcome anywhere. And so, what was I saying? Oh yeah. So all I had to rely on was like $350 a month from book royalties, and right at the start, someone stole my main book that made me about $300 a month off Amazon, and published it on Scribd for the same amount of money, and they made $300 a month off of it for 5 years. I only just got it taken down finally with a lawyer, and I'm gonna sue Scribd, and now I'm gonna sue them for the $15,000 I lost, because that was severely damaging. To be reduced to only Amazon book royalties, first of all, is brutal, and second of all, it was brutal. So people can be really nasty about this stuff. It's really sad. But it is. I'm basically a pirate. Like the idea of people getting PDFs of my books has never bothered me. I've encouraged, I can't give links to PDFs of my books because Llewellyn my butt, But I have always been, look, if I'm recommending my book to you and you can't afford it, just Google it. I've never had a problem with PDFs. PDFs sell books for me. They don't take money away. But when you get to something like that, exactly,
literally hijacks your sales, that's where you've crossed the line. That's where, and there's no excuse for that. A private person getting a PDF of your book to check it out, that's one thing. There's still people still want to buy the shiny covered nice book to put on.
But if you went to my website and you saw ripped copies of all your books for sale for $5 each,
and you're literally making money off of that, absolutely, that's a whole different story. That's literal theft.
It really is.
I think there's a line to be drawn between.
At a time in which it was illegal for me to work in Canada for 2.5 years, 2.5 year lockdown we had. It was,
and then you lose all that.
Brutal. Yeah.
I guess I've been fortunate, because if anyone's done that with my books, I haven't seen it or felt
it. I like your attitude, and you're with major publishers, and so it's a whole different story, but I like your attitude because I've never been a professional author, right? Like you are. I've just written a lot. I've written mostly academically, actually. My main writings are academic, which is why no one reads them, because they're technical and boring. They are. Well, they were designed to be that way because I was writing them to get into a doctoral program at Yale, which I did. So, they weren't meant to be enjoyable. They were meant to make you feel like you were being beaten up. And therefore, you should give this kid a scholarship. Yeah, which worked. And it worked. It's like, I feel like this book is abusing me. It's like, yes, thank you. I worked very hard to do that. But as a musician, which is what my main profession has been in life, I've always said to musicians, it's like, hey, if no one's stealing your music, you have failed.
Yeah.
if no one wants to get bootleg your music,
no one wants to share your music,
you need to write some better songs. Like the day I find people bootlegging my music will be the best day of my life. And fortunately, I have many, many good songs I've written that have not been recorded and released. So hopefully I could still achieve that one day. My dream as a musician is one day for people to be bootlegging my songs. Please go for it.
Exactly. And the bootlegs will just sell the albums.
Oh yeah. People get into your vibe and get into your aesthetic and get into your story, and that's great. So I love that you have the same mentality as an author that I have as a musician. Man, so many great musicians and who are magicians. It's amazing. Actually, when I was doing my final year of seminary and training at St. Augustine's Anglican Church, I started to get into music then, and I really sort of, and when my supervising priest, when he basically kind of dismissed me. He's like, look, you're being pulled in a different direction. You really care about playing the bagpipes. It's a long story, but it's true.
Okay.
I ended up dropping out of my PhD more or less to pursue bagpipes. Like that's not untrue. That's not untrue, and I stand by it to this day. Stand by that decision. I would have liked to also finish my PhD, but c'est la vie. But when he said to me the funniest thing ever, because this was 2005, so I'd closed Temple Tahuti, all this stuff. No one in my life knew about my magical background other than initiates, right? No one. But the priest looked at me, this old priest, Graham Brownlee. He said, "You know what?" He said, "You know what? I'm not saying that you're not called to be a priest. You clearly have a vocation, right?" And of course, I did end up getting ordained later on. But he said, "You clearly have a vocation, but you're into this music, so maybe you are called by God to be one of the world's greatest magicians. I mean musicians."
That's cute.
I was like, it was the weirdest moment in my life, right? Because I was like,
celestial Freudian slip.
I was living 2 blocks up the street from the church I was training at and doing homilies at every Sunday, and I had still a separate bedroom that I paid for that was my temple, right? Like, I was still paying to have an extra room in my house for a temple. This little house behind an Indian restaurant called Murchi, it's still there. And I was like, holy shit, is this guy channeling God? And actually, is this God speaking to me right now? Like, wow. So anyway, we should probably get to these viewer questions. Everyone's been.
Yeah, I think there are some questions.
We have some really good questions, and we have 23 people watching us right now across Facebook, YouTube, Twitch for some reason, X for obvious reasons.
Wow.
Obviously, if you're not on X, then you're not white. Sorry, I had to. And Kick, we're on Kick, which is why people are spamming us with sales ads. But we have some great questions. Thank you, everyone, for being here so late at night. It's been absolutely a blast. I could never have anticipated we'd be having quite this much fun tonight, but it just makes me all the happier to see you in person. And people, super chats is what pay for these live streams. I really don't want to go back to doing Zoom recordings and posting them later. I want to keep the live stream, live questions going. So if you can throw a few super chats, it goes straight to StreamYard. It goes straight to the $150 a month they charge to do these live streams. So if you can throw a few super chats, thank you very much. It does really help justify doing this in my ledger. But let's get to a question. All right. Someone says, what do we have here? Oh, that's an ad. Someone's voting for Austin, Texas. Blah, blah, blah. I like that. Well, the person saying we should do it in Austin, Texas is someone who's actually going to be here in Vancouver at the event. So you're going to get that. She's a very cool lady. In order to understand Crowley better, I had to study the GD system. Well, of course. How did study? Okay. Was he in full? That's a joke. What is the okay? Here we go. Putting it on screen. From Speed Altitude, what is the practical use of Enochian magic, and what can a practitioner achieve using this system of magic? Broad, but very okay.
Yeah. Yeah, that's kind of a complex question. There is an answer. Yeah. I'm just trying to think of the best way to come at it.
I mean, the simple answer is the apocalypse.
Well, nah, that's Tyson. That's Tyson.
Well, that's the Diaries. That's the Angels.
Had some. They said Logon would spread around for a while, and then the end times would come. But they never really said that the practice of the system would bring the end of the world.
If I'm not mistaken, when they asked the purpose of Enochian magic, the angels said apocalypse.
You have to find that one because I'm not familiar with that quote.
But Dee was a Greek scholar, and apocalypsis means unveiling. In Revelation, there's only one apocalypse. Revelation, there's only one apocalypse. It's the unveiling of Jesus as Lord and Savior when he returns with a sword coming out of his mouth. Hence,
true.
Why one day, if I ever do start a church, it will be the Church of Jesus Sword Mouth.
I mean, if that quote were to exist, it would make sense in the sense of Revelation. What's the purpose? Revelation.
Yes. Yeah.
But to really lay it out in plain English is Dee received the Enochian system for the purpose of controlling the world. And I don't mean in the sense of, him being master of the world and controlling the world with magic, but I mean in the sense of it was a military system. He felt that the true legitimate empire of the world was supposed to be England. Like I said, he's the one who coined the term British Empire. And the most practical parts of the system, not including the Heptarchia, that's where everything started. But once you get Liber Loga, and then you start getting into what came out of Liber Loga, which was basically the parts of the earth and the Great Table system, those were intended to help England spy on and control other countries. The parts of the earth system was literally a remote viewing system that was intended to spy on foreign countries for the British Crown. That is what that system was for. The parts of the earth, or not the parts of the earth, the Great Table was supposed to give the influence over entire quarters of the earth. The Golden Dawn interprets that as being like the four elements and the four directions, but in the journals, they're actually the geopolitical directions. So the Western Tablet gives you influence over the West, all the countries in the Western world. And the Eastern Tablet gives you influence over all the countries in the Eastern world. So, these are just examples. So the purpose he was receiving this for, what he wanted to use it for, was to further the expansion and the interests of the British Empire. So when you're looking at Dee's journals and you're asking what was all this for, that was the practical parts of the system. That's what that was for. Now, Loga, Jebafal, the 48-day ritual and all of that, the angelical language, the things that the angels were most interested in was literally, the way I interpret it, because this was in the days when the Christian Kabbalah was just being formulated, like Pico Marandola and those guys. Dee was attempting to do his own version of that. So with Liber Loga and its relationship to the counting of the Omer in the Jewish tradition, and the 50 gates of wisdom versus the 49 tables of Loga, all of that was just him trying to. The angelical language was a new sacred language for the West. It was supposed to supplant Greek and Latin and Roman, so that was the higher purpose. I think that was the angels' purpose, was giving us a Western Kabbalah, our own Western Kabbalah. And then you go back further, all the Heptarchia stuff is just a new and better Solomonic system. That was Dee using Solomonic magic to contact angels, who then said, hey, that's great, but we can make all your tools better. And they gave them all these new tools and all these new hierarchies of angels. And all of that is practically, you see Dee talk about using the angels of Mercury to find buried treasure. He used angels of healing. In the very beginning of True and Faithful Relation, you see where he's making an Enochian talisman for, I want to say her name was Isabel Lister. And she was it's been so long, but I swear she was suffering depression. And so he made a talisman for her to help with her depression. So he was using the heptarchic stuff the exact same way you would use the Solomonic Grimoires. It was just a new and improved Solomonic system. So any practical application you can think of for the Solomonic system, the heptarchia, that's what that is. But then you had the higher stuff the angels were giving, which was a new Kabbalah. And then what Dee wanted out of Liber Loga was ways to expand the British Empire. So the main uses I see for it today is mainly with the heptarchia. Like even in my Solomonic work, there's aspects of the heptarchic system that have just kind of seeded themselves out into everything I do, you know. Like for instance, I have, you hear me talk online, I have about having the 7 altars here to all 7 archangels dispersed throughout the house. And I work with them in a kind of heptameron kind of way. In fact, I even use the heptameron invocations to work with them. But every altar underneath the altar cloth has the ensign of creation from the Enochian system for that planet. And there's little ways that the heptarchic system has seeded itself out into my Solomonic practice. So that's always there. But the parts of the earth, I don't see much use for that for us today for 2 reasons. Number one, it's meant to spy on other countries. So why would you and I need to do that? I mean, unless we're unless we have some high military position. And number two,
it's not like anyone in the U.S. government would ever be talking about Enochian magic.
Yeah, well, and then number 2 is that if you were going to use the part, and this is something people don't get, you can't just go to Dee's journals and get the parts of the Earth system and use it. The angels explained to Dee that the parts shift with the stars. So the parts of the earth are always changing. And if you want to use the parts of the earth system, you first have to sit down and recalculate where all 92 parts of the earth are today. And that includes the creation of all the new countries that exist now that didn't exist back then. And in fact, the 92 parts didn't even include the New World back then. There was nothing in America in the 92 parts. So that system, I think, is more of a historical curiosity at this point. But the Great Table, of course, has lots of uses, whether you're using it Golden Dawn style or the way Dee was using it, because all the angels there have, they're angels of healing, angels of the 4 elements, angels, lots of alchemy angels in the Great Table, angels of transmutation, angels of natural substances, and all of those are useful in if you're studying and practicing alchemy, if you're working with the elements. The Great Table has application for all of that. So a little bit of a long, meandering answer.
Oh,
but that's
we'll
because
get through
Enochian has a long meandering history.
I mean, I'm sure we'll get through all the questions within the next 4 or 5 hours. Don't worry.
Whew. I'll try to be brief.
At this
What's
rate,
next?
you're the way. Hey, it's up to you, man. At this point, I'm so past my bedtime. I've been, yeah. So Le Chat says, how does Leach understand the promise from Abramelin that the Holy Guardian Angel will give us some thousands of gold florins? It's a large amount of money, which no Abramelin adept seems to have. Well, I mean, have you talked to all the Abramelin adepts? I don't think so. Maybe
You
I'm
think
sure
they'd
someone.
tell you?
You think they would be like, hey.
Okay.
So
First of all,
it's a slightly cheeky question. Question,
but
Le Chat.
First of all, the book doesn't say that. He's confusing 2 different things. There's the matter of the 72 golden florins that you're supposed to bring to the person who gives you the right. And then that person is supposed to go and distribute them to the poor. There's that, but then there's the part of the book where Abraham does say that one time only you're allowed to ask the angel for basically your fortune. You're allowed to ask the angel for what you will need for the rest of your life. And in his case, I think he said he was given, he did get his hands on like several thousand pieces of gold or something like that. But he said most of his money ended up coming from, I think he married into money. He ended up with a wife who, and then I think through her, he ended up with a whole bunch of mines, like silver mines or something. It's been a while since I've read it, but it had to do with him marrying into money. And I think her dowry is what had the thousands of pieces of gold in it. And then he had the silver mines as well. And so that's where his fortune came from. In practical terms for adepts, like when I'm teaching the class and I'm leading people through the ritual I do that every year. What I teach is that don't expect it to be like you're going to ask for thousands of dollars and the angel's going to bring you a chest of money and then you're done. Okay. What you're asking for is the resources you'll need to do whatever it is, whatever work you have to do for the rest of your life. You're asking for the angel to provide you the resources to do that. It might be money. It might be connections. It might be who knows. But you're asking your angel to put you into a position to have the resources to do your life's work. And I feel that in my case, yes, you're only allowed to ask once, and my guardian angel wouldn't allow me to ask for years. She kept saying, nope, not yet. Nope, not yet. And then I did finally ask. And yes, I received the resources to do the work that I have to do in my life. I'm sitting on 40 acres of property right now that I definitely did not have before, and I didn't get it right after Abramelin, but I ended up, throughout my life, like I said, I did Abramelin in 97. By 1998, my guardian angel was telling me to go talk to the Ciceros, and I joined the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. I ended up getting my books published. I mean, everything that I've accomplished has unfolded since I performed Abramelin. And much of it has been me directly following the advice of my angel. So
yeah,
that is the practical application of that. It's not just, oh, hey, angel, hand me some cash. And then, then I got cash. No, it's because, money doesn't work that way anyway. The angel could hand you $1 million and it'd be gone in a year. So it's about your life's work and what God's will is for you. And you're asking the angel to put you on that path and give you the resources you'll need to do what God wants of you. So,
yeah, $1 million will only buy you like a couple leather-bound grimoires these days.
Pretty much, especially if you buy them off the collector's market. Good Lord.
All right, great question, Lashat. Lashat is definitely a character from the next. Evola is awesome. His work is revolutionary. Hey, all I've ever read of Evola is the Hermetic tradition, and I did learn a lot of alchemy from it. So thanks, Evola, for that. Here's a question again from Lashat. How does Leach understand the? Oh no, that we already did that.
That's the same one.
Yeah, same one. Oh, he just has a caveat to that. It's important. I hope you'll consider it seriously. For modest estimates, it's in the low millions of dollars. Okay. Yeah, well, you get what you need. And I do find, I mean, you can see it as you're following your true will. And like Crowley says, the force of the universe is behind you. Or I look at it as like, when you find your path is a path that is going to be, it has to be true, right? If your path doesn't take you all the way, then it's not your path. So spirits, your holy guardian angel, your nous, your higher consciousness, can help you find a path that will create, complete, as the Easterners say, your dharma in this life. I do believe that. Yeah. Here we have
that's one of those things. That's one of those weird places where no matter what my issues with Crowley are, I think that's one nail he hit really good was true will. And the idea that, if you are following your true will, then you have the inertia of the universe behind you and literally nothing can stop you. Yep. And that's what I've experienced since performing Abramelin. So,
Philip Whitting says, thank you for an interesting talk. Which Enochian practice do you use most, i.e. scrying, evocation, divination? With what regularity do you recommend practicing, and how do you build up the practices? It's another big question.
Well, I'm not sure if it's really on the right lines of how it works, though, because Enochian magic isn't really structured that way, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no.
It's not like if you go into the Golden Dawn, you have a structured, almost a university style system where you're kind of being spoon-fed things, and develop your skills little by little. When you're getting into Solomonic magic, Enochian magic, even Abramelin, even though at least that's a nice solid course to follow. But all those are like shamanic practices, and they're not as structured as the Golden Dawn. So I get people that ask, well, what are the exercises I should do? What are the, and what they're doing is they're coming from the mindset of, because we're very spoiled by these magical orders that have these systems and these practices and these things that you can, build yourself up. And there isn't anything like that. In these systems, it's more of a calling. Why? The only reason I am interested in Enochian magic is because the very first time I picked up a book on Enochian, I opened it and went, this is it. I have to know this. I have to do this. It's the same with Abramelin. I opened the book of Abramelin, I read through it, and I'm like, holy crap, this is real. This is the real thing. I'm going to have to do this someday. And so it's a calling that you get called to. And if you're looking for exercises, if you're looking for ways to build up to that, your best bet is to follow an established path of initiation. That I mentioned that earlier. I have clients and students who I will tell, seek initiation. That's what you need. You need a path to follow that will take you up the tree, step by step, and help you grow and give you knowledge. And and it doesn't have to be Golden Dawn, and it can be Golden Dawn, Wicca, Thelema, but take the path, get on the path, start moving, and take these initiations. And when you're on the other side of that, you'll be in a position to use these other systems. Like in the Golden Dawn, they didn't originally have inner order material. When you went through the outer order, you went into 5 = 6, and you started using the Grimoires. That's why we have all these stories about Crowley and Mathers throwing, Grimoire spells and Abramelin squares and stuff back and forth at each other, because the Grimoires were the inner order work.
Despite everyone saying that Golden Dawn people don't work with Grimoires or know how to use them, which is a myth still being perpetuated online. Jesus. Mathers translated the Key of Solomon the same year he started the Golden Dawn. And as Tony Fuller has recently pointed out in Light Extended, most of the system was developed at that point. It wasn't actually developed later on. That's his argument. It's not definitively proven, but have you read that new revised history by Dr. Fuller? Oh, we're going to do round 3 after you read those 2 essays. It's really? They're meaty. They're meaty. I spent 3 days going back into the hospital to get my heart checked out. It turns out a great thing. And of course, that would have bankrupted me if I was in the States. So thank you, Canada. Shout out. Credit where credit's due. Just like I gave credit to Gavin Newsom for his lawyers helping me not get evicted during lockdown. Thank you. Credit where credit's due. But yeah, no, Mathers, here's the Key of Solomon translated and formatted properly. By the way, I'm starting a magical order. And people are like, oh, but there was no connection between those 2 things. It's like, really? Really? He didn't create a magical order to teach people to use do you think he started a magical order to train people to not use the grimoire he just published?
Yeah, it's like I said, they were following Levi's idea that in order to use magic, you first had to be initiated into the 4 elemental kingdoms. So the whole concept was to go through the outer order and then start using the grimoires. It wasn't until much later that they started developing actual Golden Dawn inner order material, like the opening by Watchtower and the pentagram rituals and all that. Yeah, it was originally the grimoires. That was the inner order work. So, I mean, I see what people say about the Golden Dawners, especially today, because they have a tendency to, rather than use the grimoires as they are, they just kind of use them as a framework and bring it into the Golden Dawn system. So, for example, if they're going to use the Goetia, they're going to start with openings by Watchtower and pentagram rituals, and they're going to use all the color schemes and the flashing colors of the Golden Dawn, and it's going to look like a Golden Dawn ritual. because that's the system they've been trained in, and that's kind of how the Golden Dawn tends to do things, is it just pulls everything into its own framework. Whereas what I decided to do was not incorporate the Golden Dawn material and actually use the Grimoires as they were written. So I think that's where that dichotomy is coming from, is the additions and the changes that the Golden Dawn tends to make. But I want to temper that by saying they didn't even do that in the old days. You know, Mathers and Crowley and Westcott and all them, they just used the Grimoires as they were written. At least as best as they understood them at the time. We have learned a lot since then.
Yeah, and I think, you know, again, not everything ever gets written down, so I think they had a much better and fuller understanding of things than we can deduce from manuscript fragments, you know, and novels written by Crowley or Yeats, you know. Yeah. So are you ready for a good old-fashioned Aaron Leitch rant?
Me? Am I ready for one?
Here's the next question.
Oh, geez.
Why do you hate Franz Barden, Aaron?
It's really not a rant. It's just that he made things up.
I love Franz Barden, but he did make things up.
He just made things up, and that irritates.
This is how you throw a fireball.
Well, it's not even that. I could, you know, the fantastical stuff. Okay. But when you tell me that
you're talking about the sigil,
the Shem HaMephoresh angels are really angels of the Mercury sphere, where the hell are you pulling? What ass are you pulling that out of? Or you tell me that the demons in the Book of Abramelin, those are really the demons of the 360. There's not even 360 demons in that. I think there's more than 360 demons in Abramelin. Where did he get that? Okay, so I am ranting, but yeah, he's pulling that stuff out of his butt, and he's publishing it as if it's reality. And then the reason I hate him, and the reason I hate his work, is because you have no idea how many people come into, like, say, the Solomonic group, and they want to talk about Solomonic magic, but the first thing you have to do is unteach them everything they think they know because of Barden. So it just makes our work harder when we're trying to talk about these texts. You know, well, what about the angels of the Mercury sphere? Who? Are you talking about the B'nai Elohim? I mean, who are you talking about? You know, no, the Shem HaMephoresh. And then it's like, this isn't Barden, but Rudd. Dr. Rudd is not allowed.
Oh yeah,
with the talk about him demon, either.
Lining up them with the
Oh my God, the 72, because there are 72 demons in the Goetia and 72 Shem HaMephoresh angels. They must be connected. They came from 2 different times, 2 different places, and 2 different religions. But yeah, they must be freaking connected. And you have to not only unteach people these incorrect things in order to teach them the right things, but they're also often very resistant to being untaught the wrong things, you know, and they'll be very dismissive when you're trying to teach them good material because they've already learned all the wrong stuff. And so I do rant. I do get up in arms about that because so much of my life, I mean, why do you think I wrote all that Enochian materials? Because there's so much nonsense out there. Same thing with my Abramelin classes. It was to counter the myths and the urban legends and the straight up BS that's perpetuated by frauds and people who just want either your money or your worship, you know, running around claiming to be initiated into things they're not. And so I wanted good material out there. And so, yeah, I take issue with people who are willing to just make stuff up and for their own benefit, you know, and then sell it to other people as the real deal. We have enough of a problem with fraud in the occult communities as it is. So yeah, I try to combat it as much as I can. And, you know, I don't know if I'm calling Franz Barden a fraud. I'm just saying he was willing to make crap up and publish it and tell his students, because he had a whole school of people, you know, that were following him, that was real. And if I make something up, I'm willing to claim credit for it.
Yeah, own it.
You know, I want to own it. I made this.
Yeah.
I'm not going to attribute it to Mathers. You know, I wrote a whole outer order formula for angelic invocation. It's an outer order formula. It's meant not only to be used to evoke angels by outer order members, but it's also training. It teaches them what's happening with the officers. It's I love it. I'm proud of it. And there's no way I'm putting Westcott's name on it. I don't need that legitimization. I wrote it, and if you like it, use it, and then it'll become part of the Golden Dawn tradition. But I don't need to lie. I let my work stand on its own, and I think Barden should have, and I think even Westcott and Mathers, all that nonsense about German adepts and stuff, they didn't need. You don't.
Well, that was Westcott. You got to read the fuller articles in Light Extended in the two last.
Oh, I know it was Westcott.
You got to read.
I mean,
West. Yeah, West.
There might be new info in there.
In brief, what Fuller demonstrates convincingly, in my opinion, is that Mathers showed Westcott the complete Golden Dawn system before 1888. Westcott borrowed the papers and made notes, which were the cipher manuscripts. Westcott's cipher manuscripts are
that's a hell of a reach right there.
That's his argument.
Good
receipts.
He's got some good receipts to convince me of that,
dude. I'm so fucking critical, as everyone knows.
I mean, I'm willing to believe, because I know that Mathers wrote the Z documents, and I'm willing to believe that he plugged into something to channel those Z documents. But yeah, that's a hard sell for me to suggest that he had that all figured out, and that the cipher manuscripts came from him. I don't think so. But well, like I said, I'm
really glad. I'm glad that your initial response is to not believe it, because that means that, like, when
it's gonna happen,
that
it's an extraordinary claim.
Yeah. So I'm really excited now. Proof. So we'll do round 3 on this podcast with you once you've read those 2 articles, part 1 and part 2, because you should read them and try and not believe them, because if he doesn't convince you, then he failed, right? Which I don't think he did. He convinced me, and I've always been I love my Poke Runyon cipher manuscripts. I love being able to say, I have always said this is like the grimoire from which the GD was created. But now, after reading his Fuller's research, it's like, whoa.
We shall see.
I look forward. It's so exciting. This is going to be a very anticipated round 3 we will have. Okay. Next question. Franz Barden, thank you for the rant. Knox Asperk, thank you for the donation. Every penny counts. All right, here we go. I don't want to bring politics into this. Can this system be used to actually put a full end to the conflicts that's currently happening in the Middle East?
Nope.
As Jesus said,
and I'll tell you why.
War will always be with you. Tell us why.
Well, it's not that. I mean, that is, there's always going to be Mars. There's always going to be that aspect of things. But, you're talking about specifically using it to change what's happening now, or specifically using it to change, let's say, what's happening in America right now. I have consistently been told by the angels, hands off. Something is going on. There are larger processes at work that we humans can't see. And as much as I would love, we're still working on, because I took all my old Enochian equipment and it's all put away, because none of it was really to spec. It was all like good enough, but not quite kind of stuff. And the angels told me, once I had the books written,
I know what you mean.
They said, now we've given you all this stuff about the language. We've given you the stuff to write the essential Enochian grimoire. You've collected all of this out of Dee's journals. So now don't call us again until you have all the tools the way we told Dee to make them. So I put all my old stuff away, and I've been working on doing the tools properly. We've got the table, but it isn't painted yet. So Carrie wants to get that painted this year. And at that point, at some point, once we have all the tools completed, we will perform Jebafal, the 49-day ritual. Many people are shocked I haven't done that, because I'm like, known for Enochian stuff, and I haven't even done Jebafal. But I stress to people, you don't do that until God calls you to do it. You don't just do it because you want to. So I think it's getting time. And once we get these tools done, I feel it's getting close. And it'll be time to do Jebafal. But I have been told by them, no, you're not going to change. You're not going to fix what's going on in the world, because there are bigger things going on. And if you start trying to muck around with them, you're going to actually make things worse. So, yeah, that's been made very clear to me. Do not try to magic. You're not going to get the angels to make any of this stop, because they already know what they're doing. They already know what's going on. And us getting involved is just pestering and irritating them on that. Just, you focus like a shaman. You should be focusing on your community. Focus on your community. Use your magic to do everything you can to help yourself and your family and your friends and your neighbors and your loved ones. But you're not going to be able to take down a government with this stuff. I mean, even Dee never used it for that. He wanted to, but you're not going to take down any governments. You're not going to fix the world with this. Like I said, if anything, you'll end up just hurting yourself. You're hurting yourself or others by trying to get involved in that. And that's how people get their heads put on spikes. So just don't.
We just finished painting ours. I don't know if you can see it, but here. Oh, there.
Oh, nice. You went with the wood grain? I think I've seen a picture of that, haven't I? Didn't you show me that before?
No.
Okay. That must have been someone else then.
My best friend built it from scratch. We were, so you'll see it in person, though. Maybe on the Monday. Maybe on the Monday after the conference. If the after party at Arcane Bar doesn't go too late with absinthe cocktails on Sunday night, if we are functional on Monday, maybe you, me, and Terry and a few others could use it. We'll see.
Maybe. Yeah, but it looks beautiful. I can't wait to get.
Thank you.
Because see, mine was built during the pandemic by Chick Cicero.
I know, that's awesome.
And so he built it.
What a treasure!
Carrie Michael Leach will be the one that does all the artwork on the top.
Beautiful.
And then I live right down the street from Don Craig's widow, Holly, and I'm gonna have her. She does tie dye, and I'm gonna give her the silk cloths to make the multicolored silk cloth tablecloth that goes over it.
I love your theory that it's like a rainbow cloth, and as soon as you, I was never a big fan of the cloth as I'd seen it, as I'd used it, as it was described. Then when you showed, I saw a picture of a bit of yours on your course that Jason Newcomb did. I did that, and I saw the full on like cachette, rainbow of promise style. I'm like, then I was like, yes, I know it looks hippie. I know it's like, I know, but like,
I'm gonna actually have Holly do tie dye, so mine's gonna look really hippie.
That's what I can she make two? I'll pay. I won't
probably. I mean, if you're gonna pay her.
God, yeah,
she's the one. You've seen pictures of my Raphael altar, right? All that tie dye looking modeled color behind the altar, that was her. She did that for me. So yeah, that's.
Absolutely, awesome. I do want one. I do. Well, we'll talk.
But I just love that I'm going to have this table that's all built by these famous people.
I love it.
And I told you it's going to have splinters from Dee and Kelley's alchemy lab.
It'll be in a museum. Well. And you got to take one of those splinters, send it to a science-y person, and see if there's any traces of DMT in it.
Oh, good. Wouldn't that be awesome?
Yeah.
Can you imagine how much that stuff they would have been using for it to get in onto one of the rafters?
Speed Altitude says, what about your familiar spirits? Why didn't you ask them, since they have to obey you no matter what? I don't think that's a relevant question. You've already answered that.
I'm not even sure what that's in.
Yeah.
In relation to.
So thank you for the question anyway. Nox,
I imagine my familiar spirits could affect entire countries anyway.
I think this question is my first foray. I think it's foray into Enochian is actually the Satanic Bible, even though
good Lord,
these things still happened. Yeah, things will happen. Oh yeah, things will happen. You can become a playground of forces you cannot control.
Yeah, I cringe at the idea of reciting an angelical poem where you replace the name of God with Satanus. That's literally what he did. He just, anywhere it said like, Yod or Jah the I almost said Jah the Bayoth. That's the demiurge.
Let me go get it.
Though he would just replace LeVay just replaced it with Satanus.
You gotta do the pie thing and hand drill your head. Okay, Speed Altitude. Speaking. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say.
Ramble on.
It blazes my mind that this guy found the language of angels and decided to put it in his book on Satan. That just like what? I've recited Angelical at demons before, and they don't like it.
Speaking of the Abramelin, is it true that the familiar spirits have all the full powers of the four kings of their powers are limited and restricted?
Yes. I mean, basically, what I think I understand where they're coming from. When you do Abramelin, and you do the convocation of the spirits at the end, the lowest 4 of the 12 are the Orions, Amemon, Paimon, and Araton. So those are your 4 directional kings, and they govern the 4 winds, the 4 elements, the 4 quarters of the world. That whole thing. They are the ones who give you the familiars. And it's interesting, they've picked up on that because a lot of people miss that. Those 4 familiars are direct representatives of those 4 kings. So, like, if I'm talking about my familiar who governs from dawn until noon, that's the Eastern familiar, the one who rules in the East. I can refer to him as Orions. I can be talking to you about my familiar Orions. That's not his real name. He was given to me by Orions. He's like a spark of Orions. He's a piece of Orions. And he has his own name that I won't tell you. But yeah, he is associated. So I think that's where this is coming from. Now, do they have all the full powers, or are they restricted? Yes, both. I mean, it's fractal. Within the familiar is the whole of the parent spirit, of course. But that doesn't mean that for you, they're just going to be able to do anything and everything. It's a process. You start when you come out of Abramelin, out of those 7 days, you have just been born. You are a baby. Your guardian angel is a baby, and your 4 familiars are fetuses. And you will spend the next years, the decades that follow, growing together. And growing, as you grow together, you'll grow in power and be able to do more and more. So at the beginning, your familiars aren't going to be able to do much at all. But as you work with them and build that relationship, they will get more powerful. You will get more powerful. And so, is there a limit to that? It's like asking, where does gravity stop? I actually asked that once. I asked, I think it was ChatGPT, where does Earth's gravity end? And the answer was the edge of the universe. There is no point where gravity ends. All gravity goes all throughout the universe. That's just a physical fact. And it's the same thing here. Where's the edge of your familiar's power? There's no edge of your familiar's power, but it's more about you and what you can reach and where you are in your relationship. So it's both. It's yes, they have the full powers of the 4 kings, but how much can you utilize of that? How long have you been working with them, and what have you trained them, and how have they grown with you? So there's the simple answer to that one.
Thank you. I think this has been asked and answered. Abraham the French
3,000. Yeah, that's 3,000 golden. Yeah, that was
the German version mentions marriage. So the French,
that was
the French focus on money. The German folks has marriage and less money. There you go. Cultural commentary for the day. All right, Nox Apsirk. I was 14 to be fair. Okay, good. Well, that's the questions. Aaron, thank you. Thank you for being here and keeping me up way past my pre-conference bedtime. I can't wait to see you in person. and give you a hug for way too long, as in typical left coast fashion. And welcome to Vancouver. We'll probably have beautiful weather. Our July and August are usually June. We can tend to have what we call a Junuary, and we've been known to have like 25 straight days of rain in June. Though these days with global crisis, warming, heat, whatever's going on, our weather's just been getting better and better. Our weather's just been getting better and better. Right? You guys are getting like hurricanes and tornadoes and shit, but Vancouver's just been getting more and more mellow. The summer's more temperate, the winter's not so cold. Vancouver's weather has just been getting like whatever you guys are doing down there with the environment. Thank you.
Yeah, right. Oh, jeez.
Go long enough, you'll have beachfront property. Well, I think we're actually on the fault line too. So yeah, people in Surrey will get the beachfront property. The Calisanders will have beach.
Well, that'll be after Yosemite pops.
Yeah, Noxa, thanks. Yeah, it's going to be so much fun to be hanging out with you and Justin and Terry and all these other people. Oh yeah, well, I've been planning since we talked last.
Thank you for inviting me to the conference. Yeah,
you're welcome. You're welcome, and it's you know, it's gonna the deal is great this year. Not only like because it's an international thing, we can't do ticketed events. We can't publicly say where we're meeting. Otherwise, you guys would all need visas to come here, right? We have to be private.
Really?
And that allows, you might not have done much international stuff, but this is how universities do it.
This is the first time I've ever done anything international.
Yeah, you're just getting passport situation.
Just get my passport.
It was a close call. I was anyway.
Hey, I told you I lit up Raphael's altar tonight. That's what it was for, and to help smooth that process.
You got to have your passport, baby. So that's how we do this. And I went through the legal. I checked this all out legally with lawyers and accountants and everything. But the result is so you pay for a year-long membership, but that's why you get 2 winter workshops. So I'm gonna do all the members. You not only get the conference and all the data and errata and recordings indefinitely. Excuse me. You also get free access to the winter workshop I'm going to do this winter. There's someone else who's going to do a winter workshop. That's all included as well. My workshop will probably be in Austin when I'm there this fall or winter. You also get amazingly Dr. Chato's year-long undergraduate level course, Intro to Western Esotericism. Amsterdam University wanted it. Other universities wanted it. Pan Sofers wanted it. All these people wanted to have her give them her course. She and I are tight. We also both had the same mentor, Nicholas Goodrick Clark, at the Exeter program. So we have some bonds there, and we're just friends. And so the deal we worked out, we'll be hosting her course and helping her get people enrolled here on out. She's already built it in the back end of the website. Podia is a great website for course creation with quizzes, and there'll be live sessions when it kicks off in November. Everyone who attends this year is going to be in that and learning together with live sessions, with recorded videos. We're going to level up the culture all in 1 year. So don't miss out, because if you don't get it by enrolling for EnochiaCon, it will cost you a couple $100 a month to do it. And it's still worth it, because that's still less than you pay $5,000 at a university to do a 2-semester course like this, right? In grad school, I was paying thousands. I was about to do Greek, and I'm doing it with Dr. Litwin online instead. But I was going to do Greek at UBC this winter. It's just, even to audit it is $2,000 for 1 3-month course in Koine Greek. It's $2,000, 24, something like that. Yeah, universities are expensive. So we do have to pay people. People still have to make a living to be able to dedicate their lives to scholarship and teaching. But we are able to make it a lot more accessible. So this is a crazy deal. That's why I'm pushing it so hard. I can't oversell even just access to the course. There's people who have registered for EnochiaCon just to get this course. And that's fine, because it is that amazing an opportunity, and it's going to be a whole lot of fun. So thank you for considering it. Hopefully you guys sign up online or in person, whatever. We're going to have fun. And we have one last comment that's a very nice way to send off the evening. Chris Foster says, "This was fantastic and a breath of fresh air. Answered a lot of questions without me having to ask. Have an amazing experience in Vancouver. Thank you both for the wonderful work you do. Very inspiring." Chris, God bless you. Thank you very much. That means a lot to both of us, I guarantee you. And dear Lord, I am so ready for bed, my friend, and I just can't wait to see you soon. And hopefully I won't be so busy preparing for that. Hopefully I can meet you at the airport instead of just Ubering you to your suite. Actually, I'll tell you that offline. Hopefully. Actually, hopefully I can meet you there, and I can take you. The airport has a special place outside of the airport where there's rocks and a nice sign of a plant.
A nice sign of a plant.
Of a plant, and it's like everywhere else other than where the sign of the plant is. There's big no smoking signs, and they mean it. But there's this one little garden area at the airport in the pickup spot where there's a picture of a plant and these nice stones you can sit on. And when I came back to Vancouver in 2020, it had been put up for the first time because of our laws changed. And I was like, wow. So hopefully I can meet you at the airport when you arrive, and I can introduce you to the fresh Vancouver air.
That will be cool.
Yeah,
that will be cool.
It'll be good.
And again, thanks for having me on here. And it's always fun.
Always a pleasure. I please do let your lovely, talented wife know that she has an open invite. I'm very much a clairsentient sort of feeler. I'm sort of, I think I'm kind of maybe more similar to her magically as a practitioner, even than I am to you. And so I think we would have a great time if she ever wants to come on. Open door policy. It would be great to get into the weeds of scrying, psychism, the touchy-feely stuff. I love it. I love it. I do love it. I love the theory. I love the academia, but that's when it comes to practice, I'm not like that. I'm probably more like her when it comes to actual nuts and bolts of practice and experience. So I've always wanted to talk to her, and I look forward to meeting you both in person. Sorry, the Celtic concerts, Celtic festival stopped happening on your property. Otherwise, I would have been there last year or this year. Yeah, it was sad to see that. I was so ready to grab my lute and my bagpipes and come down there and wake you up every morning outside your window playing the uilleann pipes. I was so excited. And then you told me that it fell apart because everyone's aging out and stuff. So I'm gonna have to I'm going to Texas to the Renaissance Fair because I've never been to a Renaissance festival. We don't have them in Canada.
Wow, that's where I started with Ren Fair.
We have some SCA stuff, but now I realized we do have Ren Fair stuff in a version of it, but I didn't realize it's hidden under the banner of LARPing. So there's LARPs, and that's where our Renaissance stuff fair happens. It's at like the Bricoline, the French Canadian.
Back in my day, festival. SCA and Ren Fair people did not talk.
So we don't have all we had was Renaissance Fair, or was SCA. That's all we had.
SCA.
And that's how I got into fencing and stuff like that. Yeah. So I will get to Florida one day. That's for sure. Thank you everyone for listening and being here and having a great time with us. And I'm just going to let you go. Please leave your browser open so the files on your computer can upload and I can have a highest quality possible video. So you might have to leave it open for an hour, especially if you're on Starlink. So I apologize for that. And if you have to close it, that's fine. I can send you a link to reconnect tomorrow. But yeah, it's bedtime. I'm barely awake at this point. So I'm just going to play one last little promo video for EnochiaCon, and hopefully one or two of you will support this, because if you don't support it this year, there might not be a next year. It's just how it is. I can only do so much, and it's how it works. And we're trying to build something awesome, and a lot of people do see that. So please consider being a part of the event and getting a full year of experiences as a result, not just this conference. That is very important. Also, keep in mind, it is 500 Canadian, but that's $350 US, and 150 of that goes straight to the government taxes for British Columbia and Canada. Nothing I can do about that. If people want that to change in Canada, vote differently next time. Come on, vote for a change. There you go. My little rant at the end. But yeah, do it thou wilt. Follow your conscience. Thank you, everybody. And it's been a real treat tonight to be here with you all and have you back on, Aaron. Cheers.
Great being here. Bye, folks.
Light and extension.
Canada's only occult conference returns this July 11th to 13th. EnochiaCon is an opportunity to come together with leading scholars of esotericism and practitioners of Western occultism in a friendly and open environment in Vancouver, Canada. This year in 2025, with presentations by an amazing group of presenters, including Dr. Justin Sledge, Dr. Terry Burns, Father Aaron Leitch, Dr. Sasha Chato, Frater Eleftheria of Lifting the Lamp, Dr. David Litwa, Chris Trenholm, Daniel Rekshan, David Rankine, Ike Baker, and P.D. Newman. You can also attend live online and experience premier presentations of cutting-edge research and discoveries, and experience beautiful British Columbia. Register to become a member and you also get included 2 upcoming winter workshops and access to Dr. Sasha Chato's phenomenal year-long undergraduate level course to introduce you to the academic study of Western esotericism. This is not even available at universities at the undergraduate level, but will be included now for everyone who registers to EnochiaCon 2025 before July. Tarry not and sign up today. Go to EnochiaCon.com or ArcaneResearchSociety.com for more information.
And we're done.
Cool.
End stream.